Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. The morning air hung heavy with mist as construction foreman Ray Caldwell pulled his truck onto the empty lot at the end of Sycamore Lane. The gravel crunched softly beneath the tires, a sound that should have been the only disturbance in this quiet corner of Millfield. Ray checked his watch. 6:45 a.m., 15 minutes before his crew would arrive to break ground on the Peterson family's new home. The late September sun was just beginning to burn through the fog, casting long shadows across what should have been nothing more than an empty plot of land. But it wasn't empty. Ray blinked slowly, then again, wondering if the early morning light was playing tricks on his eyes. There, where architectural plans showed only vacant space, stood a two-story Victorian house. Weathered gray siding, ornate trim painted a faded burgundy, a wraparound porch with delicate spindles, all of it impossibly present where nothing had been the day before. "This can't be right," Ray whispered to himself, the sound of his voice unusually muffled in the morning stillness. He pulled out the site plans from his leather portfolio, the paper crinkling quietly between his calloused fingers. Plot 237, Sycamore Lane. This was definitely the correct location. Ray had personally walked this empty lot with the Petersons just last week, pointing out where the kitchen would face east to catch the morning light, where the children's bedrooms would overlook the small stream at the property's edge. Ray stepped out of his truck, the door closing behind him with a soft thud that seemed to disappear into the fog. The dewy grass soaked through his work boots as he approached the house. Each step brought more details into focus: lace curtains hanging in the windows, a tarnished brass knocker on the front door, a wooden swing gently swaying on the porch, though there wasn't a breeze to move it. Detective Marion Walsh received the call at 8:17 a.m. Her coffee had just reached the perfect temperature when the phone rang, its vibration creating ripples across the dark surface of her drink. "Walsh," she answered, voice still carrying traces of sleep. "Detective, this is Officer Reyes. We've got a situation out on Sycamore Lane. Construction crew showed up to break ground on a new build and found a house already there." Marion's pen hovered over her notepad. "A house? You mean they got the wrong address?" "No, ma'am, the address is correct. According to county records and satellite imagery, this lot has been empty for at least 40 years, but there's a fully furnished Victorian house standing there now, and nobody can explain how it got there overnight." The drive to Sycamore Lane took Marion 17 minutes. 17 minutes of wondering what practical joke she was walking into, what explanation would emerge for this impossibility. She pulled up behind 3 patrol cars, their lights silently pulsing red and blue through the lingering mist. A small crowd had gathered: construction workers in their high-visibility vests, neighbors in bathrobes, city officials looking concerned. Ray Caldwell met her at the edge of the property, his face pale beneath his tan. "I've been building houses in this county for 27 years, detective. I've never seen anything like this." Marion nodded, her notepad already open. "Take me through it again, Mr. Caldwell. When was the last time you were on this property?" "Friday afternoon around 4. I was here with the Peterson family and their designer, finalizing some details. The lot was empty, just grass, some wildflowers, a couple of old oak trees at the back." "And you're certain this is the correct lot?" Ray handed her the site plans. "Plot 237, this is it." Marion approached the house slowly, her senses heightened. There was no smell of fresh paint, no signs of recent construction. The house had the settled look of a structure that had weathered decades. The wooden steps of the porch creaked beneath her weight, the sound oddly familiar, as if she'd walked these boards before. Inside, the air was cool and still. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that managed to penetrate the filmy windows. The furniture was arranged as if the occupants had just stepped out. A book lay open on an armchair, reading glasses resting on top. In the kitchen, Marian found dishes in the sink, a kettle on the stove. A calendar hung on the wall, open to September 1964. Over the next 3 days, Detective Walsh pieced together fragments of an impossible puzzle. City records showed no house had ever been built on the lot. The deed had passed through several owners who had purchased it for future development, but none had ever broken ground. Yet here stood a completely furnished house, filled with possessions, clothes in the closets, food in the pantry, family photographs on the mantle showing people no one in town recognized. On the third day of the investigation, an elderly man appeared at the edge of the police tape. He leaned heavily on a cane, his eyes fixed on the house with a look of disbelief. "Sir, you can't come any closer," Officer Reyes called out, but the man seemed not to hear. "It's back," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "After all these years, it's back." Marian approached him carefully. "Do you know something about this house, sir?" The man's eyes never left the building. "My name is Edward Thorne. 60 years ago, my father designed that house for the Sullivan family. Construction was set to begin in September 1964. "What happened?" Marian asked, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "There was a dispute about the property line, a lawsuit. Everything was put on hold." Edward shook his head slowly. "Then the Sullivans were killed in a car accident before it was resolved. The house was never built." "Never built," Marian repeated. "Then how do you explain this?" Edward finally turned to look at her, his eyes cloudy with cataracts but intense. "I can't explain it, detective, but I recognize every detail. The porch spindles my father designed himself. The stained glass transom window with the hummingbird pattern. That's my father's house exactly as he drew it in plans that never left the drawing board." The investigation continued for weeks. Experts examined the structure, architects, engineers, historians. They all confirmed the house was authentic to the 1960s period, not a modern recreation. The furnishings, the appliances, the newspapers found inside, all genuine artifacts from 1964. Yet no one could explain how a house that was never built now stood solid and real, capturing morning light through windows that shouldn't exist. The Peterson family withdrew their building plans. No one wanted to touch the property now. The house remained, cordoned off with police tape that fluttered in the autumn breeze. Marian visited the site one last time before the case was officially classified as unexplained. She stood on the porch as evening settled over Millfield, watching as lights inside the house began to turn on, one by one, though no one had entered. In the master bedroom window, just for a moment, she thought she saw the silhouette of a woman drawing the curtains closed for the night. The movement was so ordinary, so domestic, it made the impossibility of it all the more unsettling. The case file remains open in the Millfield Police Department archives. Occasionally, new detectives flip through it, puzzling over photographs of a house that, according to every record, was never built. Some say the house disappeared as mysteriously as it came, one foggy morning years later. Others insist it's still there, visible only to those who know what to look for. The Sycamore Lane lot remains empty to this day at least. That's what the property records claim. Story 2. The evening air hung thick and still over the quiet suburb of Millfield. Streetlights cast long, hazy shadows across manicured lawns as houses settled into their nightly routines, windows illuminating one by one. In the Morgan residence at the end of Sycamore Lane, 22-year-old Eliza Winters moved through the familiar motions of bedtime, a glass of water on the nightstand, the soft click of a lamp being switched off, the gentle rustling of bedsheets. She had been babysitting for the Morgan family for almost 4 years now, caring for their son, 8-year-old Oliver, a quiet child with intelligent eyes that seemed to observe everything. Outside, the distant hum of cars on the highway provided a constant, soothing background noise, punctuated only by the occasional barking of a neighbor's dog. Inside, the house creaked and settled as old houses often do, the sound of the central heating cycling on and off, marking the passage of time through the otherwise silent night. Detective Samuel Hayes rubbed his eyes as he flipped through the case file for the third time that evening. The desk lamp cast a yellow circle on the scattered documents, reports, and photographs, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to form a complete picture. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he took a sip anyway, grimacing at the bitter taste. The clock on the station wall ticked methodically, its hands showing just past midnight, though time seemed to have lost all meaning in the small, windowless room of the Millfield Police Department. The case had begun simply enough, a series of break-ins across 3 neighborhoods in Millfield over the span of 6 months. Nothing particularly unusual, some jewelry missing, a few electronics, nothing that would normally warrant special attention. But there was something about these break-ins that troubled Hayes. The perpetrator never forced entry, never left fingerprints, and most disturbingly, in each home it appeared the intruder had spent time simply watching. Homeowners reported finding chairs moved near bedrooms, or indentations on beds where someone had sat for extended periods. The Watcher, the local paper, had dubbed the unknown subject, much to the department's annoyance. The name had stuck, though, and now even the officers used it in their internal communications. Hayes' attention turned to the most recent report, the one that had elevated the case from concerning to genuinely alarming. 3 nights ago, Eliza Winters had called the police from the Morgan residence, her voice trembling but controlled as she reported what she believed to be an intruder in the house. By the time officers arrived, there was no one to be found and no evidence of forced entry or theft. Just an open window in the den that everyone swore had been closed, and the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne. But it was what Oliver Morgan had said that truly disturbed both Eliza and the responding officers. The boy had padded into the living room as Eliza was speaking with police, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and said with unsettling clarity, "He watches her every night. He likes her hair." When questioned further, Oliver had simply shrugged and asked for a glass of water before returning to bed. The next morning, he had no recollection of the conversation. Hayes pulled out a small tape recorder and pressed play, listening again to the interview with Oliver conducted the following day. The boy's voice was thin and high, innocent in its cadence, but somehow knowingly precise in its choice of words. "Sometimes I see him when I'm almost asleep," Oliver's recorded voice explained. "He doesn't know I can see him. He thinks everyone is sleeping." "And where do you see him?" Hayes' recorded voice asked. "Different places, sometimes in the yard looking up, sometimes on the stairs. Once he was sitting at the end of my bed, but he wasn't looking at me. He was listening to Eliza's music in the next room." Hayes had asked if Oliver was frightened, and the boy's response had been perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire interview. "No, he's not here for me." Detective Hayes had interviewed dozens of children over his 15-year career. They often had active imaginations, certainly, but there was something in Oliver's tone, a matter-of-factness, an absence of the dramatic embellishment typical of childhood stories that made Hayes believe the boy was describing something he had genuinely seen. The detective looked up as his partner, Detective Martina Rhodes, entered the room, carrying 2 fresh cups of coffee. She set one on his desk and took a seat opposite him, the wooden chair creaking slightly under her weight. "Anything new?" she asked, her voice low and steady in the quiet of the late-night precinct. Hayes shook his head slowly. "Nothing concrete, but I've been thinking about the timeline." He pulled out a map of Millfield, markers indicating each of the break-ins over the past 6 months. The incidents have been moving, starting from Westridge, then Cedar Heights, now Sycamore Lane. It's like he's following something or someone, Rhodes finished. Hayes nodded, taking a sip of the fresh coffee. "I checked the victim profiles again. Most are families, different income levels, different home security systems, nothing connecting them except..." He pulled out another file, flipping it open to reveal a list of names. 3 of the homes employed the same babysitter at some point in the last year. "Eliza Winters," Rhodes stated rather than asked. "Eliza Winters," Hayes confirmed. "College student, works part-time at the library, babysits for extra cash. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. By all accounts, a model citizen." "And you think she's being stalked by this watcher?" "I think it's worth looking into why multiple homes she's connected to have been targeted." The next morning, Hayes and Rhodes visited Eliza at her small apartment near the Millfield Community College campus. She met them at the door, her expression wary but composed. The living room was neat and sparsely decorated, a few framed photographs, a small collection of novels on a bookshelf, a potted plant catching sunlight from the window. Hayes noticed Eliza had placed a wooden dowel in the track of her sliding glass door, a simple but effective security measure. "I've already told the officers everything I know," she said, offering them tea they both declined. "I didn't actually see anyone in the house, I just felt something was wrong." "And what about Oliver's comments?" Rhodes asked gently. "About someone watching you?" Eliza's fingers tightened around her mug. "Oliver has always had a vivid imagination, but..." She hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the window. "Sometimes lately I felt like I'm being watched, even here. It's probably nothing, just paranoia after hearing about the break-ins." "Has anyone shown unusual interest in you recently?" Hayes asked. "Someone at work, school, or in your personal life?" "No, no one." That she stopped abruptly, a look of realization crossing her face. "Well, there was a maintenance worker at the library about 2 months ago. He kept finding reasons to work near the children's section where I read to the kids on Saturdays. The head librarian eventually complained because he was there for almost 2 weeks fixing things that didn't seem to need fixing." Hayes leaned forward. "Do you remember his name?" "Just his first name, Daniel. He said everyone called him Danny." Later that afternoon, Hayes was examining maintenance records from the library while Rhodes spoke with the head librarian. The contractor who had been hired was legitimate, but the worker described by Eliza Danny didn't appear on their employee roster. The contractor confirmed they had hired a temporary worker for that period, but he had provided minimal documentation and disappeared after 2 weeks. That evening, Hayes positioned himself in an unmarked car across from Eliza's apartment building. Rhodes had arranged for a patrol car to occasionally drive past the Morgan residence, where Eliza was babysitting again. The night was quiet, a light rain creating a hypnotic pattern on the windshield. Hours passed without incident. Just after midnight, Hayes' phone buzzed with a message from Rhodes. The patrol officer had noticed a car parked 2 blocks from the Morgan house, the driver apparently sleeping inside. When approached, the vehicle had pulled away quickly. Hayes started his car and drove toward Sycamore Lane, a sense of urgency building in his chest. As he turned onto the quiet street, his headlights swept across a figure standing motionless beneath a large oak tree, partially hidden in shadow, looking up at the Morgan house. The figure didn't run when the car approached. Instead, it turned slowly toward the headlights, revealing a man's face, expressionless and calm. By morning, the pieces had finally begun to fall into place. The man, Daniel Whitman, had a history of obsessive behavior. 3 years earlier, he had been questioned but never charged in connection with a similar pattern of break-ins in another state. He had worked briefly at Millfield Community College as a groundskeeper before taking the temporary position at the library, both places where Eliza spent significant time. In Whitman's apartment, they found notebooks filled with detailed observations of Eliza's daily routine. Photographs taken through windows, a small collection of items stolen from homes where she had worked a hairbrush with strands of her hair still entangled in the bristles, a coffee mug she had used, a scarf she had left behind at one family's house. Most disturbing of all, they found a journal entry dated 6 months earlier, describing the first time Whitman had seen Oliver Morgan watching him from a bedroom window as he observed the house. "The child sees me," he had written, "but children are rarely believed." When Hayes questioned Oliver again, asking how he had known about the man watching Eliza, the boy simply shrugged his thin shoulders and said, "Sometimes, when people think really hard about something, you can see it around them like colors." He was always thinking about Eliza, so I could see her in the colors around him. Daniel Whitman was charged with multiple counts of breaking and entering, stalking, and theft. In the courtroom, he never once looked at the evidence presented against him. His gaze remained fixed on Eliza, sitting tensely in the gallery, until the bailiff finally led him away. Hayes closed the case file with a sense of completion, but not satisfaction. The system had worked, evidence had been gathered, a suspect apprehended, charges filed. Justice in its procedural form had been served, but he couldn't shake the image of Oliver Morgan's untroubled expression as he described seeing colors around people who were thinking too hard, or the way Eliza still checked her locks 3 times before bed, or how Daniel Whitman had smiled just slightly when the judge had read his sentence. Some cases, Hayes knew, were never truly closed, some mysteries never fully explained, and sometimes the most unsettling truths came from the mouths of children who saw things adults had trained themselves to ignore. In the quiet town of Millfield, life returned to its normal rhythm. Streetlights still cast long shadows across manicured lawns. Houses still settled into their nightly routines. And in the Morgan residence at the end of Sycamore Lane, a little boy with knowing eyes still watched the darkness from his bedroom window, seeing things that others could not. Story 3. The hallway stretched before her like a ribbon of muted beige, each identical door marked with brass numbers that glowed softly under the recessed lighting. The carpet absorbed the sound of her footsteps as she moved, creating an unusual silence that seemed to hang in the air. It was late afternoon at the Westlake Hotel, that liminal time when the sun's angle through the windows created long, unusual shadows across the walls. Detective Sarah Mercer walked slowly, her notebook open in one hand, her other tracing lightly along the wallpaper as she moved. The texture was rough beneath her fingertips, expensive but worn in places. The hotel had once been grand, still was, in many ways, but time had left its marks in the small details only someone looking for them would notice. All rooms were occupied that night, the manager had insisted, his voice carrying the practiced smoothness of someone used to handling difficult guests. We were at full capacity. Every room was accounted for in our system. He had shown her the reservation logs, neat columns of names and dates, all properly filled. Yet here she was, investigating a room that shouldn't have existed. Room 412 had appeared on no booking records, no guest had checked in, no key had been issued. But when Eliza Chen, a business traveler staying in 410, had taken a wrong turn returning from the ice machine, she had found the door to 412 slightly ajar, just an inch of darkness visible in the gap. "I thought maybe housekeeping was inside," Eliza had explained during her interview, her fingers nervously twisting the strap of her purse. "I was going to walk past, but something felt wrong, the silence maybe. Usually you hear movement when someone's cleaning." The detective paused now before the door, 412. The brass numbers were identical to all the others. Nothing marked this room as special or different. She slipped on latex gloves with practiced ease, the soft snap against her wrists a familiar sound that grounded her. The door was sealed with police tape, but she had the key card that security had finally managed to program after 3 attempts. Inside, the room was a contradiction. Perfectly made bed, corners tucked with military precision. A suitcase, expensive, leather, monogrammed RJK stood neatly by the closet. A jacket hung over the desk chair. A half-empty glass of water sat on the nightstand, a perfect crescent of lip balm marking its edge. Everything suggested occupancy. Nothing suggested violence. "The suitcase is the strangest part," Detective Mercer murmured into her voice recorder, the slight static of the device filling the silence. "Packed for approximately 3 days. Men's clothing, size medium. Toiletry bag containing basic items: razor, shaving cream, toothbrush, cologne. Prescription bottle for Robert J. Keller. Blood pressure medication." She paused, looking around the room again. "But Robert J. Keller never checked in. Robert J. Keller has no reservation." According to all official records, Robert J. Keller doesn't exist in this hotel. The windows overlooked the parking lot, 11 floors below. Rain had started to fall, creating a gentle patter against the glass and turning the world outside into a watery blur of headlights and neon signs. Detective Mercer stood watching for a moment, feeling the slight chill that seeped through the glass. The case had begun 3 days ago when Eliza Chen had entered room 412 and found it apparently occupied but empty. She had tried to leave, but the door had jammed. Her calls to the front desk went unanswered. Later investigation revealed a temporary phone system glitch affecting that section of the hotel. After 20 minutes of trying the door and calling for help, it had suddenly opened for her. Shaken, she had reported the incident to hotel security. That should have been the end of it, a door that stuck, a room mistakenly left unlocked. Perhaps even a guest who had managed to check in off-the-books. Hotels sometimes made arrangements for VIPs who preferred discretion. But when security investigated, they found something impossible. The room showed signs of occupancy, but no one had been assigned to it. The electronic lock showed no entries except for the master keycards used by housekeeping that morning, and the suitcase, when opened, contained a wallet with $5,000 in cash, but no ID. "I've pulled the security footage for the entire week," Detective Mercer told her partner, Detective Wilson, as they sat in the hotel's security office later that evening. The room was cramped, filled with monitors showing different angles of the hotel. The security guard had given them space, stepping out for coffee that they hadn't asked for. "Interesting what's not there," Wilson said, leaning forward to study the screen. The footage showed the hallway outside 412. People walked past guests, housekeeping staff, a maintenance worker, but no one entered or exited room 412 during the entire 72-hour period they had reviewed. "The bed was made by housekeeping at 10:17 am 3 days ago," Mercer noted, pointing to the screen where a housekeeper's cart could be seen outside the door. "The staff confirms the room was empty then, standard cleaning, nothing unusual. And no one enters after that," Wilson finished. "So how did a suitcase, men's clothing, and prescription medication appear in a room that no one entered?" The rain had intensified, drumming against the windows of the security office. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, a low vibration more felt than heard. "Let's check the prescription," Mercer suggested. "If Keller exists, his pharmacy will have records." The bottle had been bagged as evidence and sent to the lab, but Mercer had photos. The prescription was from a pharmacy in Auburn, a small town about 40 miles away. A call confirmed that Robert J. Keller was a patient there, a 67-year-old man with hypertension and a history of minor heart problems. "He's real," Wilson said, hanging up the phone, "and according to his daughter, he's missing. She filed a report 3 days ago when he didn't arrive for their weekly dinner. His car was found in the parking lot of a rest stop on Highway 16. Highway 16 led directly to the Westlake Hotel. The case shifted then from a curiosity to something darker, a missing man, a room that contained his belongings but no trace of his presence, no record of his check-in, no footage of him in the hotel. Detective Mercer returned to room 412 alone that night, after most of the hotel had gone quiet. The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows. She stood in the center of the room, trying to feel whatever might be hidden beneath the surface of the ordinary. The closet door was slightly open. Inside hung a single dress shirt on a wooden hanger, blue with thin white stripes. The detective opened the closet fully, running her hands along the walls, the shelf above. Nothing unusual. She crouched, examining the carpet, the baseboards. There in the corner of the closet, barely visible in the shadows, was a small dark stain. She photographed it carefully, then tested it with a presumptive blood kit from her case. The swab turned blue almost immediately. "Wilson," she said into her phone, keeping her voice low despite being alone. "I've got blood in the closet of 412. Small amount could be explained away, but not with everything else. I'm calling in forensics." The forensics team worked through the night, their quiet efficiency turning the hotel room into something clinical and strange. They found more blood microscopic drops leading from the closet to the bathroom drain. They found a single fingerprint on the inside of the bathroom door that didn't match hotel staff or Eliza Chen. By morning, they had a preliminary match to Robert J. Keller through his military service records. "So he was here," Wilson said, rubbing his tired eyes as they sat in the hotel restaurant, untouched coffee cooling between them. "But how did he get in without being seen, and where is he now?" The manager joined them, his earlier smoothness replaced with genuine concern. "I've spoken with all staff who were working that day," he said, placing a list of names before them. "No one remembers Mr. Keller. No one remembers issuing a key to room 412. Detective Mercer spread out the photos taken from security cameras covering the hotel entrances. "We need to go through these frame by frame," she said. "He came in somehow." The day passed in the meticulous tedium that formed the backbone of any investigation. Eyes growing tired from scanning hundreds of faces entering the hotel, cross-referencing timestamps, interviewing staff again and again, approaching the same questions from different angles. It was Wilson who found it late in the afternoon. "Here," he said, pointing to a frame showing the service entrance. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m. 3 nights ago. A figure stood half-turned away from the camera, holding the door for a hotel employee carrying supplies. The employee nodded thanks, and in that brief moment, the figure slipped inside behind them. "That's not Keller," Mercer said, studying the grainy image. The man was younger, thinner, wearing a hotel uniform that now seemed obviously ill-fitting. "No," Wilson agreed, "but watch the next camera." The interior service corridor camera showed the same man walking confidently through the hotel's back areas. He passed the laundry room, the staff break area, and then entered a utility closet. "He never comes out," Wilson said, "at least not on camera, but 20 minutes later, look who exits the north stairwell on the 4th floor." The image was blurry but unmistakable. An older man, matching Robert Keller's description from his driver's license photo. He walked slowly down the hallway toward room 412, pulling a suitcase behind him. "So someone smuggled him in," Mercer said, the pieces starting to align but still not quite fitting. "But why, and where did he go?" The final piece came from an unexpected source. The hotel's night auditor, a college student who worked the overnight shift, recognized the younger man from the security footage. "That's Marcus Reynolds," she said, tapping the screen. "He worked here last summer as a bellhop, got fired for stealing from rooms." Marcus Reynolds had a record: petty theft, fraud, nothing violent. They found him working at a gas station in Auburn, the same town where Robert Keller lived, the same town where Robert Keller filled his prescriptions. Under questioning, Reynolds broke quickly. "It was supposed to be a con," he confessed, his eyes darting between the detectives. "I met Keller at the pharmacy, struck up a conversation. Found out he had money. His wife died last year, left him with a good insurance payout. I told him I could get him a room at the Westlake at half price because I had connections." Reynolds swallowed hard. "He gave me cash. I used my old employee knowledge to sneak him in through the service entrance. Got him to room 412, which I knew was kept as an emergency overflow room and usually empty." "What happened in that room?" Detective Mercer asked, her voice calm despite the tension building in her chest. "Nothing," Reynolds insisted too quickly. "I left him there. That was the con he pays for a room that doesn't officially exist. The hotel never knows he's there. I pocket the cash." But his eyes didn't meet hers, and his fingers tapped an anxious rhythm on the table. "We found blood, Marcus," Wilson said quietly. "Not much, but enough." Reynolds' face crumpled. "It was an accident," he whispered. "He realized he'd been conned, said he was going to report me. There was a struggle. He fell, hit his head on the corner of the desk. I panicked." "Where is he now?" Mercer asked. The answer led them to the hotel's massive industrial laundry facility. Behind the largest machines, hidden in a service tunnel that had been marked as unused for years, they found the body of Robert J. Keller. He had died from a single blow to the head, just as Reynolds had described. Detective Mercer stood in room 412 one last time after the case was closed. The suitcase was gone, taken as evidence. The bed had been stripped. Soon, the room would be cleaned and returned to the hotel's inventory, perhaps with a different number to erase the memory of what had happened there. The rain had finally stopped, and late afternoon sunlight slanted through the windows, creating long shadows across the empty room. In the silence, she could almost hear the echo of what had transpired: a simple con gone wrong, a panicked decision, a man who disappeared from a room that was never booked. She turned off the light and closed the door behind her, leaving only silence where a mystery had once been. Story 4, the soft yellow glow of the bathroom light cast gentle shadows across the tile floor. Emma Gilbert stood motionless, her fingers gripping the cool porcelain edge of the sink. She stared unblinking at her reflection in the mirror that hung above it. Behind her reflection, barely visible in the dim light, stood a figure tall, still, watching. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she slowly turned around, her heart pounding against her ribs like a prisoner desperate for escape. The bathroom was empty. It always was. Detective Sarah Mercer sipped her coffee, wincing slightly at the bitter taste that lingered on her tongue. The precinct was quiet this early in the morning. Only the occasional ring of a distant phone or the soft clicking of computer keys broke the silence. The manila folder in front of her was too thin for a case that had already been open for 3 weeks. She ran her finger along the edge of the folder, creating a soft, whispering sound that seemed to echo in the stillness of the room. "You're here early," said Detective James Cooper, his voice low and gravelly as he approached Sarah's desk. He placed another folder beside the one she'd been contemplating. "Thought you might want to see this." Sarah opened the new folder, revealing photographs of an apartment bathroom clean, ordinary, unremarkable. The mirror above the sink reflected the camera's flash, creating a stark white void in the center of the image. She studied each photograph methodically, carefully, allowing her eyes to absorb every detail, every shadow, every reflection. "Emma Gilbert," she said softly, more to herself than to Cooper. 28 years old, moved into the Westlake apartment 6 months ago. No history of mental illness, no drug use, no domestic disputes. She paused, allowing the silence to settle around her words like dust. And yet she was terrified enough to stop sleeping. Terrified enough to cover every mirror in her apartment with sheets. Terrified enough to... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Cooper knew how the story ended. The Westlake apartment stood tall against the overcast sky, its brick exterior darkened by the light rain that had started to fall. Sarah pulled her coat tighter around her as she approached the entrance, the sound of her footsteps on the wet pavement creating a rhythmic pattern that matched her heartbeat. The lobby was warm, with soft lighting that created a welcoming atmosphere, a stark contrast to the case file tucked under her arm. The elevator hummed softly as it carried her to the 4th floor. The hallway was quiet, the thick carpet absorbing the sound of her footsteps as she made her way to apartment 412. She removed the small key from her pocket, the metal cool against her fingertips, and unlocked the door. Emma Gilbert's apartment was exactly as described in the file: clean, organized, normal, except for the bathroom. Sarah stood in the doorway, her gaze fixed on the sheet that had been carefully draped over the mirror above the sink. It hung there like a ghost, a silent witness to whatever had transpired in this small, tiled room. Sarah approached the mirror slowly, the sound of the air conditioning creating a soft, persistent hum in the background. With careful fingers, she lifted the edge of the sheet, revealing the reflective surface beneath. The mirror was ordinary, no unusual markings, no obvious defects, just glass and silver, showing Sarah her own reflection, tired eyes looking back at her from a face that had seen too many unsolved cases. She let the sheet fall back into place and turned her attention to the rest of the bathroom. Everything was in order: towels folded neatly, shower curtain pulled back, sink wiped clean. There was no sign of struggle, no indication of anything unusual or threatening. Just a normal bathroom in a normal apartment with every mirror covered by carefully placed sheets. Sarah returned to the living room and sat on the edge of the sofa, opening her notebook to a blank page. The pen felt heavy in her hand as she began to write, documenting her observations in a neat, methodical script that flowed across the page like water over smooth stones. "Detective," the voice startled her, causing her pen to pause mid-sentence. She looked up to find the building superintendent standing in the doorway, his expression a mixture of curiosity and unease. "Mr. Harmon," she acknowledged, closing her notebook, "thank you for meeting me." He stepped into the apartment, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for something or someone in the corners and shadows. "Terrible business," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ms. Gilbert was a good tenant, quiet, paid her rent on time." "When did she first complain about the mirrors?" Sarah asked, watching his face carefully, noting the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. "About 3 months ago," he replied, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Said she was seeing things, someone standing behind her. I checked the apartment myself, plumbing, electrical, everything. There was nothing wrong." "And the previous tenant?" Sarah's question hung in the air between them, creating a tension that seemed to thicken the atmosphere. Mr. Harmon's gaze dropped to the floor. "Ms. Chen," he said, the name coming out as a sigh. "She lived here for almost a year before Ms. Gilbert, never complained about anything. Then one day she just left, no notice, no forwarding address, just disappeared." A soft chime from Sarah's phone interrupted the conversation. A text message from Cooper: "Found something. Previous tenant before Chen. Come back to the station." The precinct was busier now, filled with the sounds of ringing phones, conversations, and the persistent hum of fluorescent lights. Cooper was waiting for her, his desk cluttered with papers and photographs spread out like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. "David Merrick," Cooper said without preamble, pushing a photograph toward her. It showed a man in his early 30s with dark hair and eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. Lived in apartment 412 for 8 months before moving out suddenly. No explanation, no notice. Sarah picked up the photograph, studying the face that looked back at her with empty eyes, and before him. Cooper slid another file across the desk. Rebecca Torres, 6 months in the apartment, left without notice, and before her Michael Lawson, 4 months, same story. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, like cold fingers tracing the vertebrae one by one. How far back does this go? "I've tracked it back 5 years so far," Cooper replied, his voice low. 10 tenants, all in apartment 412. All leaving suddenly without explanation. Sarah opened the folder, revealing a series of photographs, different faces, different names, but all with the same haunted look in their eyes. And Emma Gilbert is the first one too. "Yes," Cooper confirmed, the word falling between them like a stone. The next morning found Sarah back at the Westlake Apartments, standing once again in the bathroom of apartment 412. The sheet still hung over the mirror, undisturbed since her last visit. With deliberate movements, she removed it completely, folding it carefully and placing it on the counter beside the sink. The mirror reflected the small room perfectly: the shower curtain, the towel rack, the tiled walls. And Sarah, standing alone, her expression a mixture of determination and apprehension. She stared at her reflection, searching for anything unusual, any distortion or anomaly that might explain what had happened in this room. Minutes passed, marked only by the soft ticking of her watch and the steady rhythm of her breathing. Nothing appeared, nothing changed. The mirror remained just a mirror, reflecting reality without alteration or addition. Sarah sighed, the sound seeming to echo in the small space. She turned away from the mirror, preparing to leave, when a movement caught her eye, a subtle shift in the reflection, a shadow where no shadow should be. She froze, her gaze locked on the mirror once more. Behind her reflection stood a figure, indistinct, hazy, but undeniably there. A chill spread through her body as she slowly turned around, expecting to find someone behind her. The bathroom was empty. Sarah turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there, more distinct now, tall, with features that seemed to shift and change like smoke in a breeze. She could make out eyes, dark and hollow, staring not at her reflection but directly at her, as if looking through the mirror from some other place. With a steadiness that surprised even herself, Sarah raised her hand to touch the mirror's surface. The glass was cold beneath her fingertips, colder than it should have been in the warm apartment. The figure in the reflection raised its hand as well, mirroring her movement, its fingers seemingly pressing against the glass from the other side. Sarah's phone rang, the sound jarring in the silence of the bathroom. She withdrew her hand quickly, stepping back from the mirror. When she looked again, the figure was gone, leaving only her own reflection, pale and wide-eyed. The call was from Cooper. "Sarah, we found something. Records from the original construction of the building. There was an accident during the installation of the bathroom fixtures in apartment 412. A worker died, fell, and hit his head on the sink. The mirror was installed the next day." Sarah's gaze returned to the mirror, seeing nothing now but her own reflection and the bathroom behind her. "I'm on my way back," she said, her voice steady despite the chill that still lingered in her veins. As she turned to leave, she caught one last glimpse of herself in the mirror, and for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, she thought she saw a smile on her reflection's face that did not match her own. The case of Emma Gilbert in apartment 412 at the Westlake Apartments remains officially unsolved. The mirror was removed and destroyed, the bathroom renovated, and the apartment rented to new tenants who have reported no unusual occurrences. Detective Sarah Mercer requested a transfer shortly after filing her final report, citing personal reasons. Her whereabouts are currently unknown. In her final report, only one line stands out from the otherwise methodical documentation. "Sometimes, what watches us from the other side of the mirror is not our reflection, but something that has learned to mimic it perfectly until it decides not to." Story 5. The old Victorian on Maple Street stood silent against the fading twilight, its newly painted exterior gleaming under the soft glow of street lamps. Detective Sarah Morgan paused at the edge of the property, her notepad heavy in her hand as she observed the house that had dominated the department's attention for the past 3 weeks. A gentle autumn breeze rustled the pages, the sound mingling with distant traffic and the occasional chirp of evening crickets. The Henderson family had purchased the property 6 months earlier, a foreclosure that had been vacant for nearly 2 years. The bank had invested in extensive renovations, new hardwood floors throughout, updated electrical, fresh drywall in every room, and modern fixtures that complemented the home's century-old character. Real estate photographs showed bright, welcoming spaces that promised new beginnings. The inspection had been thorough. revealing nothing out of the ordinary. Detective Morgan's shoes made a soft clicking sound against the newly paved walkway as she approached the front door. The porch light cast long shadows across her face, creating pools of darkness in the corners of the veranda. She knocked with 3 measured taps, the sound echoing through the entryway behind the door. Emma Henderson opened the door, her face drawn with exhaustion. Dark circles framed eyes that darted nervously over the detective's shoulder before settling on her badge. The woman's fingers trembled slightly as she invited Morgan inside, the scent of fresh paint and new carpet filling the detective's nostrils as she crossed the threshold. "Thank you for coming back," Emma whispered, though they were alone in the house. "Michael took the children to his mother's. We couldn't stay another night." The foyer opened to a renovated living room, where a half-empty cup of tea sat on the coffee table beside a stack of untouched magazines. The space was immaculate, too immaculate, Morgan noted, as though the family had barely lived in it despite having moved in months ago. "When did you first notice the voices?" Morgan asked, her pen poised above her notepad, the tip making a soft indentation in the paper without leaving a mark. Emma's eyes drifted toward the eastern wall of the living room, where a large abstract painting hung slightly off-center. 3 weeks after we moved in. At first we thought it was the neighbors. Their yard backs up to ours and sound carries strangely in old houses. Her fingers twisted a loose thread on her sweater sleeve, but then it started saying our names. Morgan nodded, making notes with slow, deliberate strokes. The Henderson case file was already thick with interviews, neighbors who'd heard nothing unusual, previous owners with no strange experiences to report, contractors who'd renovated the property and found nothing out of the ordinary hidden within its bones. "It was faint at first," Emma continued, her voice lowering as though the house itself might be listening. "Just a whisper, Emma, so soft I thought I'd imagined it. Then Michael, then Sophie and Ethan, our children." A shiver passed visibly through her body. "It knew all our names, detective, before we'd even met any of the neighbors." The wall in question had been opened 3 times already. Morgan had supervised the second inspection herself, watching as contractors carefully removed sections of drywall, revealing nothing but fresh insulation, updated wiring, and the structural beams that had supported the house for over 100 years. "And you're certain the voice was coming from inside the wall?" Morgan asked, though she'd asked the same question during previous visits. Emma nodded, her gaze now fixed on the wall. It got louder over time, clearer. Sometimes it would call out in the middle of the night, sometimes during dinner. The children started having nightmares. She paused, swallowing hard. "Last week it started mimicking our conversations, things we'd said to each other days earlier." Morgan approached the wall, running her fingertips along the smooth surface. The paint was cool beneath her touch, the texture uniform, nothing to indicate any hidden compartments or speakers embedded within the structure. "The contractors found nothing unusual when they opened the wall?" she asked, though she knew the answer from her own observations. "Nothing," Emma confirmed. "They said we might be hearing pipes or the house settling, but pipes don't call your name, detective." The case had become something of an obsession for Morgan. 3 separate inspections had revealed nothing, and yet the accounts from the Henderson family remained consistent. 4 people, all hearing the same voices, all identifying the same wall as the source. "I'd like to try something different today," Morgan said, reaching into her jacket pocket to retrieve a small device. "This is an ultrasonic microphone. It can pick up frequencies beyond what the human ear typically detects." She placed the device against the wall and activated it, watching as the digital display registered ambient sounds, the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, the distant rumble of a passing truck, the soft breathing of Emma Henderson several feet away. For 10 minutes they stood in silence, the only movement Morgan's occasional adjustment of the device's position along the wall. Emma stood with her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes never leaving the spot where the detective worked. The device emitted a soft beep, causing both women to start slightly. Morgan's eyes narrowed as she studied the readout, a series of sound waves appearing on the small screen. "There's something," she murmured, pressing the device more firmly against the wall. A faint electronic signature. Emma took an involuntary step backward. What does that mean? Instead of answering, Morgan retrieved a small hammer from her toolkit and gently tapped along the wall, listening for variations in the sound. Near the baseboard, about 2 feet from the corner, the tone changed slightly, a hollow sound rather than the solid thud of the surrounding areas. "Mrs. Henderson, I need your permission to open this section of the wall," Morgan said, her voice steady despite the acceleration of her pulse. Emma nodded quickly. "Do whatever you need to do, please." With careful precision, Morgan created a small hole in the drywall, then used a cutting tool to expand it into a square approximately 1 foot across. She worked methodically, collecting the drywall dust in a plastic sheet spread beneath the work area. As she pulled away the final piece, she shined her flashlight into the cavity revealed. There, nestled between 2 studs in a space that had somehow been missed during the renovation, sat a small device, a digital recorder, its metal casing dulled with age. A thin wire led from it to what appeared to be a small speaker embedded in the insulation. Morgan carefully extracted the items, placing them in an evidence bag. "It's a recording device," she explained to Emma, whose face had gone pale, "and it appears to be connected to a wireless receiver." "But who would?" Emma's voice trailed off as Morgan turned the recorder over, revealing a small adhesive label on its underside. In faded ink, barely legible, was written a single name, Henderson. That's Michael's father's handwriting," Emma whispered, her hands beginning to tremble more violently. "But he's been dead for 5 years. He never even saw this house." Morgan activated the recorder, and a series of voices emerged from its speaker, Emma calling to her children for dinner, Michael discussing weekend plans, the children laughing during a game. And then, more disturbingly, the same voices played back at odd intervals, sometimes overlapping, sometimes distorted into whispers. "It's been recording us," Emma said, horror dawning on her face, "and playing our own voices back to us." Further investigation revealed a sophisticated system designed to activate at random intervals or in response to certain sound patterns. The device had been recording the family's conversations and replaying them through the hidden speaker, creating the illusion of voices within the walls. The question of who had installed the system remained unanswered for weeks, the investigation revealing layers of complexity that seemed to extend beyond simple harassment. The recorder itself was an older model, manufactured at least 7 years earlier, but the installation appeared to have been done during the renovation. When contractors were re-interviewed, none could explain how the device had been missed during the extensive work on the house. Records showed that the eastern wall had been handled by a subcontractor who had since relocated to another state. It wasn't until Morgan tracked down this subcontractor a man named Jenkins with no apparent connection to the Henderson family, that the final piece fell into place. Jenkins recognized the handwriting on the label immediately. "That's definitely Walt's handwriting," he confirmed, referring to his former business partner, Walter Henderson. He helped with some of the electrical work on that house before moving on to another job. I remember because it was unusual. He normally didn't do residential projects. Walter Henderson, Michael's estranged cousin, a man the family had not spoken to in nearly a decade following a bitter dispute over a family inheritance. A man who had known exactly who would be purchasing the renovated house months before the Hendersons themselves had even seen the property listing. The device in the wall hadn't been placed there by chance. It had been waiting for them all along. The Henderson family never returned to the house on Maple Street. The property was sold at a loss, the new owners informed of its unusual history. The recording device remained in police evidence, its purpose fulfilled, its mechanical heart finally silent. Detective Morgan would occasionally drive past the old Victorian in the months that followed, wondering about the voices that had once emanated from behind its walls, voices that had belonged to the victims themselves, twisted and returned to them as a form of psychological torture by someone they had once called family. The house stood quiet now, its secrets exposed but not forgotten, a reminder that sometimes the most haunting voices are the echoes of our own. Story 6. The old municipal library of Beckford stood 3 blocks from Main Street, its weathered brick exterior almost apologetic against the modern glass storefronts that had gradually replaced the town's historic buildings. Inside, the scent of aged paper and wood polish created an atmosphere that seemed to exist outside of time. The soft yellow light of reading lamps cast gentle shadows across the worn wooden floors, and the occasional whisper echoed between towering shelves that reached toward ornate ceilings. Detective Sarah Mercer moved through the reference section with deliberate steps, her leather shoes making the faintest sound against the hardwood. She wasn't officially on duty, but the case had consumed her thoughts for weeks now. The disappearance of Eliza Whitney, a 32-year-old archivist who had last been seen in this very library 26 days ago, remained unexplained despite the department's best efforts. Sarah ran her fingertips along the spines of leather-bound volumes, feeling the slight texture of each as she passed. The building was nearly empty at this hour, just past 7 p.m. on a Thursday in late autumn. A library assistant moved silently between the shelves, returning books to their proper places. Outside, a light rain began to fall, creating a rhythmic patter against the tall windows. "You're back again," observed Martin Green, the head librarian, his voice so quiet it barely disturbed the silence. He stood at the end of the aisle, his tall frame slightly stooped from decades of bending to retrieve books from lower shelves, still looking for answers about Eliza. Sarah nodded, her expression revealing little. "I'm missing something. She came here almost every day for 2 weeks before she vanished. There's a reason." Martin adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and gestured toward a door at the back of the reference section. "The archives are open if you want to look again. I'll be at the front desk if you need anything." The archive room was cooler than the main library, the climate control protecting the delicate materials stored within. The air felt heavier here, pressing gently against Sarah's skin as she switched on the desk lamp. Its warm glow pushed back the darkness but created deeper shadows in the corners of the room. Metal shelving units filled with boxes and files stood in neat rows, each labeled with meticulous precision. According to the sign-in logs, Eliza had spent most of her time in the local history section, specifically among materials from the 1940s. Sarah had already examined these files twice before, finding nothing that seemed relevant to the woman's disappearance. Yet something continued to pull her back to this place, like a persistent whisper she couldn't quite hear. She pulled out the drawer containing photographs from 1940-31945, carefully lifting a folder of newspaper clippings. As she set it on the reading table, a small notebook slipped from between the pages and landed on the floor with a soft thud. Sarah paused, certain she hadn't seen this item during her previous examinations. The notebook was bound in faded brown leather, its edges worn smooth from handling. No library marking adorned its cover, suggesting it wasn't part of the official collection. With careful fingers, Sarah opened it to the first page. Elizabeth Ann Whitney, read the handwritten title. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Elizabeth Eliza's full name written in elegant cursive that had yellowed with age. Below it, a date, September 17, 1944. The pages that followed contained detailed accounts of a woman's life, daily activities, thoughts, interactions, all written as if by an observer. Sarah turned the pages slowly, her breathing shallow as she progressed through the narrative. The details were intimate, precise, describing events from childhood through adulthood. Events from Eliza Whitney's life. The lamp on the desk flickered briefly, casting momentary shadows across the page. Sarah's fingers trembled slightly as she continued reading, the sensation of wrongness growing with each turn of a page. The entries progressed chronologically through Eliza's life, including details that would have been impossible for anyone to know: private moments, unshared thoughts, precise conversations held behind closed doors. The final entry was dated October 3rd of the current year, the day before Eliza disappeared. The last page contained only a single line: "Tomorrow she will know." Sarah closed the notebook, her pulse quickening despite her efforts to remain calm. The impossibility of what she held weighed heavily in her hands. This book predated Eliza's birth by decades, yet contained her life story up to the present. More disturbing still was the implication that someone had been watching Eliza, documenting her most private moments for her entire life. The sound of a door closing somewhere in the library barely registered in Sarah's consciousness. She opened the notebook again, flipping through the pages more urgently now, searching for any clue to the author's identity. Near the back cover, she found a small pocket containing a photograph, sepia-toned, showing a young woman standing in front of the library. Though the fashion belonged to the 1940s, the face was unmistakably Eliza Whitney's. Written on the back in the same elegant script, "She always returns." The soft scrape of a chair being pulled back made Sarah look up. Across the table sat Martin Green, the librarian, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You found it," he said simply. "What is this?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the unease spreading through her. "How is this possible?" Martin folded his hands on the table, his eyes never leaving hers. "There are 17 notebooks like that one in this library. 17 lives documented before they were lived." His voice had lost its earlier warmth, becoming as dry and brittle as the pages surrounding them. "Some of us are merely characters in stories already written, Detective Mercer." "Where is Eliza Whitney?" Sarah kept her right hand close to her side, where her service weapon rested in its holster. "Where she has always been," Martin replied, "where she always returns." He gestured toward the notebook. "Keep reading. You'll find your own name eventually." The lamp flickered again, longer this time, and when the light stabilized, Martin was gone. Sarah rose quickly, scanning the room, but she was alone among the shelves and shadows. With cautious steps, she moved through the archives, notebook in hand, her senses alert to every sound. The main library area was deserted now, no patrons, no staff, just rows of books stretching into darkness where the overhead lights had been turned off. At the front desk, the sign-out sheet showed that the last staff member had left at 6:30 p.m. According to the large clock on the wall, it was now 8:47. Sarah placed the notebook on the counter and opened it again, turning to the final pages she hadn't yet read. New text had appeared after the last entry she had seen. The handwriting was the same elegant script, but the ink appeared fresher, darker on the page. Detective Sarah Mercer found the notebook on November 7th. She would not believe what she read until she saw her own name. By then, it would be too late. Like Eliza Whitney before her and Alexandra Kane before her, she would become part of the library's collection. Some stories are circular, some readers become the read. The front door of the library swung open slowly, pushed by the evening breeze. Beyond it, the empty street glistened with rain. Sarah looked back at the notebook, then at the door. Behind her, from somewhere deep within the building, came the soft sound of pages turning. The Beckford Police Department found Detective Mercer's vehicle in the library parking lot the next morning. The building was locked and empty. Security cameras showed her entering at 6:42 p.m. but never leaving. In her desk at the station, officers discovered a case file she had been assembling, not about Eliza Whitney's disappearance, but about 7 other missing persons over the past 60 years, all last seen at the library. The notebook was never found, but in the archives, a new leather-bound volume appeared on a shelf, its cover unmarked except for the library's cataloging number. Inside, the first page bore a simple title in elegant, handwritten script. Detective Sarah Elizabeth Mercer. The case remains unsolved. Story 7, she found the photo tucked between the pages of an old book she bought at a thrift store. It was a picture of her taken outside her childhood home, but she had never seen the photo before, and the house in the background, it had burned down years ago. The soft yellow glow of the reading lamp cast gentle shadows across the living room as Detective Morgan Hayes spread the case files across her wooden coffee table. Outside, a light rain tapped against the windows, creating a soothing rhythm that accompanied her evening review. She lifted the photograph, studying it under the warm light, feeling its weathered edges between her fingers. The image showed Eliza Winters, age 32, standing in front of a white Victorian house with green shutters, a house that had been reduced to ashes 15 years earlier. She came in yesterday afternoon, the captain had told Morgan earlier that day, his voice low and measured in the quiet of his office. Calm on the surface, but I could see it in her eyes, that look people get when their world stops making sense. Morgan understood that look. She had seen it countless times during her 12 years with the department. The book itself was unremarkable, a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby, purchased for $2 from a charity shop downtown. The strange thing wasn't just the photo's subject matter, but its condition. It wasn't faded like an old photograph should be. The colors remained vibrant, the image crisp. Morgan ran her thumb along the glossy surface, feeling a slight chill despite the warmth of her apartment. Eliza Winters lived alone in an apartment on Maple Street, worked as a graphic designer, and according to everyone who knew her, was utterly ordinary until now. The fire that destroyed her childhood home had claimed the lives of her parents. Eliza, just 17 at the time, had been staying at a friend's house for a sleepover. Fate's small mercies, people called it. The detective set down her cup of tea, the ceramic making a gentle click against the wooden coaster. She studied her notes written in careful, measured handwriting. The book had been donated to the thrift store 3 weeks ago, according to the manager. The donation had come from a large collection, dropped off by a local estate attorney clearing out the home of a deceased client, Edmund Blackwood, a retired photography professor who died at age 78, leaving no family. Morgan's pen made soft scratching sounds as she added another note to her pad. A connection needed to be established between Blackwood and the Winters family. Perhaps he had known them, photographed them. But that wouldn't explain how he possessed an image of a house that no longer existed, with an adult Eliza standing in front of it. The next morning brought weak sunlight filtering through thin clouds as Morgan parked outside the small office of Jerome Palmer, the estate attorney who had handled Blackwood's affairs. The office smelled of old paper and coffee, and Palmer himself, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses that magnified his pale blue eyes, seemed like an extension of his surroundings. Blackwood was a peculiar man, Palmer said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone used to discussing the affairs of the dead. Brilliant in his field but solitary, his house was filled with photographs, thousands of them. Most were ordinary landscapes, architecture, portraits, but some, he paused, adjusting his glasses, some seemed impossible. Morgan leaned forward slightly. Impossible how? Places that don't exist, or rather places that no longer exist, captured as though they were still standing. I assumed they were clever manipulations, digital compositions. Professor Blackwood was known for experimental photography techniques. The detective felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the room, like the pressure dropping before a storm. Did he ever mention the Winters family, or their house on Elm Street? Palmer shook his head slowly. Not specifically, but there was a journal among his possessions. I didn't include it in the donation, something about it felt too personal. He pulled open a drawer and removed a leather-bound book, sliding it across the desk with deliberate movements. Perhaps this will help make sense of your photograph. Back in her car, Morgan placed the journal beside her, resisting the urge to open it immediately. Some things deserved the right setting, the proper attention. The drive back to the station was accompanied only by the sound of her tires on wet pavement and the occasional swish of wipers clearing the misting rain. Later, seated at her desk with a fresh cup of coffee steaming beside her, Morgan carefully opened Blackwood's journal. The handwriting inside was neat, precise, the script of a man who believed in documentation. Most entries were technical, discussing light exposure and chemical processes. But as she turned the pages, the writing began to change, becoming more urgent, more personal. It worked again today, read an entry from June 2018. The method captures not just what is, but what could be or what once was. I'm photographing echoes, reflections from other times. The implications are staggering. Morgan's finger traced the words, feeling the slight indentation they made in the paper. Blackwood's entries described a technique he called temporal photography, a method he claimed could capture images across time itself. Most of his colleagues had dismissed it as delusion or metaphor, but Blackwood had been utterly convinced of his success. As daylight faded outside her office window, Morgan found the entry she had been searching for. October 2023, just months before Blackwood's death, photographed the old Winters place today, curious to see if the technique works on locations with traumatic endings. The girl appeared in the frame, unexpectedly a subject from the present against a backdrop from the past. The convergence is unprecedented. I must study this further. The soft hum of the heating system provided a gentle backdrop as Morgan sat back in her chair, considering the implications. Either Blackwood was suffering from delusions, or he had somehow captured an impossible image Eliza Winters as an adult, standing before her childhood home that had long since been reduced to ashes. 3 days later, Morgan sat across from Eliza Winters in a quiet corner of a cafe downtown. Between them, protected in a clear evidence sleeve, lay the photograph that had started it all. "I've never stood there as an adult," Eliza said softly, her fingers hovering over the sleeve without touching it. "The house burned down when I was 17. This can't exist." Her voice remained calm, but Morgan noticed the slight tremor in her hands, the way she blinked a little too rapidly. "Edmund Blackwood," Morgan began, keeping her tone gentle and measured, "was a professor of photography who lived on the other side of town. Did you ever meet him?" Eliza shook her head slowly. "The name isn't familiar." "He believed he had developed a technique to capture images across time," Morgan continued, feeling slightly awkward saying the words aloud. In the ordinary light of day, surrounded by people enjoying coffee and conversation, it sounded absurd. He called it temporal photography. A sad smile touched Eliza's lips. "That sounds like science fiction." "I thought so too, but I've been looking into his other photographs. There's a collection at the university archive buildings that have been demolished, standing whole again. Parks before they were developed, captured in perfect detail." Morgan paused, watching Eliza's expression carefully. "All taken recently, according to the timestamps and digital metadata." The cafe around them seemed to recede, the ambient conversations fading into background noise as Eliza stared at the photograph again. "So what does it mean? That some part of my house still exists somewhere, or that I'm somehow connected to it even now?" Morgan had no answer that would satisfy either of them. The rain had started again outside, painting the windows with streaks that blurred the world beyond the glass. His journal mentioned that you appeared unexpectedly in the frame. He hadn't planned to photograph you, just the house. Eliza looked up, her eyes suddenly sharper. "I've been having dreams about the house for months now, walking through rooms that I can still remember perfectly. I thought it was just grief or memory." She hesitated, then added, "In the dreams, I'm always looking for something I left behind." The investigation officially concluded 3 weeks later, filed away as an unexplained curiosity. The department had no procedure for handling impossible photographs, and Morgan's supervisor had gently suggested that some of life's mysteries were best left unsolved. The photograph was returned to Eliza, and Blackwood's equipment was donated to the university photography department, where it would likely be dismantled, studied, and ultimately misunderstood. But on quiet evenings, when rain tapped against her windows and the world seemed soft around the edges, Detective Morgan Hayes would sometimes find herself looking through her personal copies of Blackwood's notes, wondering about the nature of time, memory, and loss. And across town, Eliza Winters had hung the impossible photograph on her bedroom wall, a reminder that perhaps the past was never truly gone, just existing somewhere beyond our ordinary perception, waiting for the right moment, the right light to reveal itself once more. Sometimes, when the light hit it just right in the early morning, Eliza could swear she saw smoke rising faintly from the chimney of a house that had burned to the ground 15 years ago. Story 8, her new apartment seemed perfect, spacious, affordable, and close to work, but at night she heard someone pacing above her. The landlord insisted the unit above hers had been empty for years. but when she checked the stairwell, fresh footprints led right to her door. The sound of rain against the windows of apartment 2B created a gentle percussion, a backdrop to the otherwise silent building. Sarah Miller had moved in just 3 weeks ago, leaving behind a cramped studio for this unexpected find, a one-bedroom unit in the historic Wesley building, a structure that had stood on Maple Street since 1931. The rent had been surprisingly reasonable, perhaps too reasonable, some might say in retrospect. Detective James Harmon's pen moved methodically across his notepad as he documented the timeline of events. The soft scratch of ballpoint against paper punctuated the hushed atmosphere of the precinct's interview room. His partner, Detective Elaine Torres, studied the photographs spread across the metal table, images of footprints in dust, of a ceiling with peculiar markings, of a floor plan that didn't quite add up. Ms. Miller reported the noises on her third night in the apartment, Harmon noted, his voice low and measured. Described as footsteps, always beginning around 11:15 p.m., always following the same pattern from what would be the living room area of the apartment above to what would be the kitchen, then to the bedroom directly over hers. The building manager, Raymond Porter, a man with perpetually damp palms and a tendency to avoid eye contact, had assured Sarah that the apartment above 3B had been vacant for over 2 years. The previous tenant had relocated to Seattle after a job offer. The unit was being held for Porter's nephew, who would be moving in after graduating college in December. So why, Torres wondered aloud, her finger tracing the edge of one photograph, did we find fresh footprints on the stairwell leading to 3B, when the door was supposedly locked with no signs of forced entry? The footprints themselves told a story medium-sized, likely a man's, with a distinctive wear pattern on the right heel. They appeared in the dust of the rarely used service stairwell, becoming fainter near Sarah's door, as if someone had been careful to tread lightly there. Sarah had begun documenting the disturbances in a journal, which now sat in an evidence bag on Harmon's desk. The handwriting started neat and skeptical, then gradually became more urgent, the pressure of the pen leaving deeper impressions on the paper. October 4 heard footsteps again, called landlord. He said, "I'm imagining things." October 7, footsteps started earlier tonight, also heard what sounded like furniture being moved. October 10, found a strange mark on my ceiling, looks like something was drilled through from above. The building itself seemed to breathe with secrets. Constructed originally as a hotel, it had been converted to apartments in the 1960s. The conversion had been done hastily, with corners cut and spaces reconfigured in ways that didn't always make architectural sense. Some of the older residents spoke of odd spaces between walls, of rooms that seemed smaller than they should be. Detective Torres spent an afternoon in the county archives, the musty scent of old blueprints filling her nostrils as she compared the original hotel plans to the current apartment layout. Her finger traced the outline of what should have been apartment 3B, then stopped. According to the original plans, the space above Sarah's apartment was significantly larger than what the current floor plan showed. "There's a discrepancy," she told Harmon later, the soft glow of their desk lamps creating islands of light in the darkened office. About 200 square feet unaccounted for. The wall that should divide 3B from 3C doesn't match up with the original structure. On October 15th, after hearing what sounded like a heavy object being dragged across the floor above her bedroom, Sarah had taken a flashlight and ventured up the service stairs herself. The metal door to 3B showed no signs of recent entry. The dust around the frame was undisturbed, but in the hallway leading to it, she found those footprints, fresh in the dust, leading to her own door and then disappearing. The building superintendent, Manuel Reyes, had worked at the Wesley for nearly 3 decades. When questioned, he shifted uncomfortably in his chair, the vinyl squeaking beneath his weight. "Mr. Porter doesn't like us talking about the changes to the building," he finally admitted, voice barely above a whisper. When they converted the place in '67, they found it was cheaper to just wall off some areas than to completely renovate. There are spaces between some of the apartments, not on the official plans. The revelation led to a careful inspection of Sarah's apartment. The walk-in closet in her bedroom caught Tor's attention. The back wall didn't align with the dimensions of the apartment. When she knocked on it, the sound was different from the other walls, hollower, less substantial. "It's been altered," the forensic technician confirmed, running his fingers along a nearly invisible seam. "See this? There used to be a door here. It's been plastered over, but not professionally." When they removed the false wall, they found what had once been a service corridor, now a narrow passage with a metal staircase leading upward. The air that wafted down was stale, carrying a faint scent of cologne and something else, something less pleasant. The passage led not to apartment 3B as the detectives had expected, but to a space between 3B and 3C, a forgotten room from the original hotel, approximately the size of a generous walk-in closet. Inside, they found evidence of habitation: a small mattress, empty food containers, a camping lantern, and several spiral notebooks filled with observations. October 2, new tenant moved in today. Female, mid-20s, lives alone, quiet footsteps, goes to bed around 10:30. October 5, she hears me. Started moving only after she falls asleep, but tonight she woke up. Need to be more careful. October 13, I could reach through the vent while she was at work, touched her hairbrush. She'll never know how close I am. The notebooks went back 18 months, documenting multiple tenants of apartment 2, be the handwriting matched samples taken from lease applications submitted by one Jerome Wells, the supposed previous tenant of 3B, who had allegedly moved to Seattle. He never left, Harmon concluded, closing the case file with a soft thud. He just moved into the walls. They found Wells 3 days later, sleeping in an employee break room at the shopping center where Sarah worked. In his backpack were more notebooks, a copy of her apartment key, and a small collection of items taken from her apartment: a hair tie, a ticket stub from a movie she'd attended, a receipt with her signature. What they didn't find was any evidence that he had ever intended to harm her. In his own disturbed way, Wells had convinced himself he was a benevolent guardian, keeping watch over the succession of tenants in 2B. His notebooks contained oddly protective passages amid the disturbing observations. Made sure the window was fully closed before she got home. Rain would have damaged her books. The maintenance man didn't fix her sink properly. I tightened the pipe while she was at work. Sarah Miller never returned to apartment 2B. The building management, facing potential lawsuits, paid for her relocation and settled out of court. The Wesley building underwent a thorough inspection, revealing not just one but several hidden spaces, architectural ghosts from its past life. Jerome Wells was committed to a psychiatric facility, diagnosed with a combination of conditions that had led to his strange behavior. He cooperated fully with authorities, seeming almost relieved that his double life had been discovered. Detective Torres sometimes drives past the Wesley building on her way home. The apartments are still occupied, lights glowing warmly behind curtains. New tenants have moved in, unaware of the history written in the walls around them. On particularly quiet nights, she wonders if they ever hear footsteps, soft, careful steps that follow a familiar pattern through rooms that exist only in the spaces between what is seen and unseen. Story 9. The rain fell in a gentle, persistent rhythm against the windows of Detective Sarah Mercer's office. Each droplet traced a lazy path down the glass, merging with others as they descended into the darkness below. The soft yellow light of her desk lamp cast long shadows across stacks of manila folders, their edges worn from countless hours of handling. It was well past midnight when the recording landed on her desk, a simple voice message that would unravel a mystery buried for 12 years. "Please don't open the door." The voice crackled through the speaker of her ancient desktop computer, distorted by static yet unmistakably urgent. A man's voice, low and desperate. 7 words that had sent Eliza Warren into a state of quiet panic 3 nights ago. Sarah pressed replay, closing her eyes to better absorb the nuances of the voice. The message had come to Eliza's phone at 2:17 a.m. on Tuesday. When she had tried to call the number back, she discovered something impossible. The line had been disconnected over a decade ago. The number belonged to her brother, Michael Warren, who had disappeared 12 years earlier. The detective's fingers traced the edge of the case file, worn thin from years of periodic review. Michael Warren, 28, had vanished without explanation in the autumn of 2013. His car was found parked at Blackwater Lake, a fishing spot he frequented, but no other trace was ever recovered. After 3 years, the case had grown cold. After 7, it had been archived. Now somehow his phone number had reached out from the past. "The technology unit says it's impossible," murmured Detective Mercer to the empty room. Her voice seemed to be absorbed by the old wooden panels lining the walls of the precinct building. "Disconnected numbers don't make calls." She lifted a ceramic mug to her lips, the coffee long since gone cold. The bitterness matched her mood as she turned another page in Michael's file. In the dimly lit office, Sarah studied the photographs arranged in chronological order. Michael Warren smiling at his sister's college graduation. Michael fishing at Blackwater Lake, holding up a modest catch with pride. Michael at his desk at the regional water management office where he had worked as an environmental scientist. His life, captured in still images, ended abruptly like a book with its final chapters torn out. The following morning, Sarah drove to Eliza Warren's modest suburban home. The neighborhood was quiet, with only the occasional sound of wind chimes from a nearby porch breaking the silence. Eliza opened the door before Sarah could knock, as if she had been waiting by the window. "Have you learned anything?" Eliza asked, her voice thin with hope and fear. At 41, she looked older than her years, grief having etched permanent lines around her eyes and mouth. "I'd like to hear more about your brother's work," Sarah replied, following Eliza into a living room where time seemed suspended. Photos of Michael were everywhere, preserved in an eternal present where he was forever 38, forever missing rather than gone. "He loved his job," Eliza said, sinking into an armchair as she gestured for Sarah to sit. "He was investigating water quality issues at several development sites. Nothing dangerous, just routine environmental impact studies." She paused, running her finger along the arm of the chair. "At least, that's what he told me." Sarah nodded, making a note in her small leather-bound notebook. The scratch of her pencil was audible in the quiet room. "And the last time you saw him?" "Sunday dinner here the weekend before he disappeared. He seemed preoccupied. He kept checking his phone." Eliza's eyes drifted to the window where rain had begun to fall again, gentle but persistent. "I asked if something was wrong. He said it was just work stress. I didn't push." That afternoon, Sarah visited the offices of the Regional Water Management Authority. The building was a concrete square, unremarkable except for the blue-tinted windows that reflected the cloudy sky. Inside, the air was cool and stale, filtered through an aging HVAC system that hummed constantly. Harold Prentice, the current director, had been Michael's supervisor 12 years ago. He received Sarah in an office decorated with awards and certificates, each frame perfectly aligned with the next. "Michael Warren," he said, without waiting for Sarah to explain her visit. "I heard someone's been asking about him again." He adjusted his tie, a nervous gesture that made Sarah take particular note of his demeanor. "Tragic situation, one of our best analysts." "I understand he was working on several development sites before his disappearance," Sarah said, watching Prentice's face carefully. "Standard regulatory work," Prentice replied too quickly. "Environmental impact assessments for the Blackwater Shore development, if I recall correctly." "The same Blackwater where his car was found," Sarah noted, her voice neutral but her attention sharp. Prentice's fingers tapped a rhythm on his desk. A coincidence, surely. Michael often went fishing there. It was public land then. The development didn't break ground until years later. As Sarah left the building, the rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy with moisture. She drove slowly to Blackwater Lake, now transformed into an exclusive lakeside community of modern homes with picture windows and private docks. The public access point where Michael's car had been found was now a residents-only marina. She parked at the community entrance and walked along the shoreline as far as she could before private property began. The lake water lapped gently at the rocky edge, each small wave erasing the marks of the one before it. Something about this place had called to Michael in his final days. Something had brought him here. Back at the precinct, Sarah spread the contents of Michael's case file across her desk. Employment records, bank statements, phone logs from 2013. Nothing unusual, except for a series of calls to a number that belonged to Clayton Reynolds, a board member of Shore Point Development Corporation, the company behind the Blackwater Shore project. Sarah dialed Eliza Warren. "Did your brother ever mention someone named Clayton Reynolds?" The silence on the line stretched for several seconds. "Yes," Eliza finally answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "The night before he disappeared, he called me. He said he had found something in the water samples, something that Reynolds was trying to bury. He was supposed to meet me the next day to explain, but he never showed up." The following morning, Sarah requested the original water testing reports from the county archives. Hours later, she sat at her desk, comparing Michael's submitted reports with his handwritten field notes recovered from his home after his disappearance. The discrepancies were subtle but unmistakable. The official reports showed acceptable levels of chemical compounds. His field notes indicated dangerously high concentrations of industrial waste. Someone had altered the reports. As Sarah drove to Clayton Reynolds' office at Shore Point Development, the pieces began to align. The altered reports, the calls between Michael and Reynolds, the location of Michael's abandoned car. A pattern was emerging from the fog of 12 years. Reynolds' assistant led Sarah into a corner office with views of the city skyline. Reynolds himself stood by the window, a silhouette against the gray afternoon light. "Detective," he said, turning to face her, "I understand you're looking into that old missing persons case, the environmental scientist." "Michael Warren," Sarah replied, studying the man carefully. At 65, Reynolds had the confident bearing of someone accustomed to power and its privileges. His sister received a call from his disconnected number 3 days ago. Reynolds' expression didn't change, but his hand tightened almost imperceptibly around the pen he was holding. That sounds like a technical glitch or a cruel prank. Perhaps, Sarah conceded, but it made me look again at Michael's work before he disappeared, specifically his water quality reports for Blackwater Shore. The pen in Reynolds' hand stopped moving. Ancient history detective, that development was completed years ago. Yes, Sarah agreed. After Michael's reports cleared the way for construction, reports that appear to have been altered from his original findings. The silence in the room was thick enough to touch. Outside, clouds gathered, darkening the office despite the wall of windows. 12 years is a long time, detective, Reynolds finally said, his voice measured. Memories fade, evidence disappears, people move on. Not everyone, Sarah replied, not Eliza Warren. As she left Shore Point Development, Sarah's phone rang. The lab technician's voice was excited. We found something in the voice message. Behind the static, there's another voice, very faint. It says Blackwater East Shore, under the old dock. The rain had started again as Sarah drove to Blackwater Lake. The exclusive community was quiet in the late afternoon, most residents not yet home from work. She parked at the visitor lot and walked along the shoreline, past the marina to the eastern edge where development had stopped. An old wooden dock, partially collapsed, extended into the water, a relic from before the development, somehow overlooked in the transformation of the area. Sarah knelt at the edge of the dock, her flashlight beam cutting through the gathering dusk. The water was clear enough to see the rocky bottom near the shore. Among the stones, something reflective caught the light, a metal box, small and weatherproof, the kind used to protect documents or electronic devices. 3 days later, Sarah sat across from Eliza Warren in the living room full of Michael's photographs. Between them on the coffee table lay the contents of the waterproof box, a flash drive containing unaltered water testing data, emails between Reynolds and other Shore Point executives discussing how to handle the problem of Michael's findings, and a handwritten note from Michael himself, dated the day he disappeared. I don't know if this will ever be found, the note read, but if it is, know that I tried to stop them. Reynolds said they would destroy my career if I went public. When I threatened to do it anyway, the threats became more personal. I'm leaving this evidence here and going to meet them one last time to try to reason with them. If you're reading this, I wasn't successful. Eliza's tears fell silently as Sarah explained what would happen next. The investigation reopened, the evidence evaluated. Clayton Reynolds and possibly others questioned about Michael's disappearance and the environmental data that had been suppressed. But how, Eliza asked, wiping her eyes. How did I get that phone call? How did it lead us here? Sarah had no answer that would satisfy either of them. In her years as a detective, she had learned that sometimes mysteries solve themselves in ways that defy explanation. A voice from a disconnected line, a message across time. Perhaps it was simply that buried truths, like bodies in shallow graves, eventually find their way to the surface. As she left Eliza's house that evening, Sarah looked up at the clearing sky, where stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere miles away, the waters of Blackwater Lake lapped against the shore, carrying secrets that had waited 12 years to be heard. Justice moved slowly like those waters, but it was coming, and somewhere perhaps Michael Warren knew it. Story 10, she cleared the steam from the mirror, gazing at her reflection. Everything appeared normal at first glance, her features familiar, her attire unchanged. Yet a sense of unease crept in as she continued to peer into the mirror. a subtle movement caught in the corner of her eye, not of her own making. Turning away, she expected her reflection to follow suit, but it remained motionless, almost as if it was observing her. This peculiar incident marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's unsettling journey. What unfolded would baffle investigators and send shivers through the community for years to come. Residing in a modest apartment in a serene suburban area, Rebecca led a solitary life. Known to her acquaintances as meticulous and introverted, she maintained a polite distance while remaining amicable with her neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst for a medium-sized firm dictated a life governed by routines and exactness. There was nothing in her demeanor to suggest that she would become entangled in one of the decade's most enigmatic criminal enigmas. The first signs were subtle. Rebecca noticed minor rearrangements in her living space. Objects shifted from their usual places, not missing but displaced. A cup on a different shelf, books rearranged, her toothbrush seemingly out of place. Initially brushing off these anomalies as mere lapses in memory, she attributed them to her prolonged hours under harsh fluorescent lighting, analyzing spreadsheets until her vision blurred. Detective Marion Shaw was informed of the situation when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of these disturbances, finally reached out to the authorities. The initial evaluation suggested a potential mental health concern rather than criminal activity. Shaw noted the absence of concrete evidence, no signs of forced entry, no missing possessions, just a woman feeling unsettled in her own home. The report was documented but placed among the lower priority cases in Shaw's workload. The pivotal moment arrived with the incident involving the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent contact with the police, Rebecca recounted the eerie experience in vivid detail, the sensation of her reflection moving independently, the persistent feeling of being observed even in solitude. This time she had proof, footage from a security camera she had installed, focused on her front entrance. The recording unveiled a chilling revelation that sent a shiver down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video captured Rebecca leaving for work in the morning, only to show an identical figure using a key to enter her apartment 20 minutes later. Forensic experts scrutinized the footage for any signs of tampering or manipulation, but found none. The individual mirrored Rebecca's movements, attire, and even carried her distinctive leather bag. Yet, according to time-stamped records from her workplace security system, Rebecca was already present in her office building across town. "We are facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can mimic her with uncanny precision." The investigation escalated as fingerprints across the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, with no foreign DNA detected. Neighbors reported seeing nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca following her usual routine. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, mentioned a peculiar encounter where she greeted Rebecca upon her return home, receiving no response, a behavior she found unusual but not alarming. Rebecca began documenting these disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations in her living space multiplied. Food vanished from her fridge, unexplained searches appeared on her computer, and unsettlingly, she discovered selfies on her phone that she had no memory of taking. In some pictures, her expression seemed subtly distorted, her smile too wide, her gaze too intense. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," she confided to Detective Shaw during their subsequent meeting. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating this chaos to make me believe I am." A breakthrough emerged when a pattern was discerned in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated when Rebecca departed for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery errands, predetermined activities with predictable durations. An individual intimately familiar with your schedule, Shaw elaborated. This goes beyond randomness, it's targeted surveillance and infiltration. A forensic psychologist hypothesized that they were dealing with a fixation case, a person fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, living her life, potentially aiming to replace her entirely. Such occurrences, though rare, were catalogued in psychological studies. The perpetrator typically underwent a psychological fracture, fixating on a victim who embodied qualities they desired: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The focus of the investigation narrowed when Rebecca mentioned a former colleague, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, often remarking on their shared traits. Post-dismissal, she sent Rebecca a series of unsettling emails, one suggesting, "Sometimes I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's residence. What they uncovered transformed the case from disconcerting to nightmarish. Within Lily's abode, they found a room meticulously fashioned as a replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were adorned with countless images of Rebecca entering her apartment, socializing, engaging in activities, all captured without her awareness. A wardrobe held exact duplicates of Rebecca's attire, cosmetics matching her preferred brands laid out on a vanity, alongside detailed notes on her habits, mannerisms, and speech patterns. Most incriminating were the practice videos. Lily had recorded herself mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions. The progression was evident, with early attempts being clumsy and overt, evolving into near indistinguishable imitations of the genuine Rebecca. "She aspired to be me," Rebecca murmured upon witnessing the evidence, "not just imitating, but erasing me." Technicians uncovered sophisticated tools for replicating keys and duplicating electronic access cards. Lily had orchestrated a sophisticated system to monitor Rebecca's movements, including a meticulously maintained calendar predicting her schedule. However, Lily's ultimate motives remained elusive. Journals discovered in her residence contained rambling passages fluctuating between first and third person, occasionally referencing Rebecca as me and her in the same sentence. The final entry sent a chill down the investigators' spines. "Soon, only one of us will remain. The stronger version will prevail." When authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished, leaving behind signs of a hurried departure, drawers ajar, certain technology missing. A nationwide alert was issued. Rebecca was relocated to a secure location under constant surveillance, while every site associated with her previous life was meticulously monitored for 3 weeks. Lily never surfaced. The case took a sinister turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomalous occurrence. Despite being on leave and under protection at a secure facility, Rebecca was spotted entering the building. Surveillance footage confirmed the sighting. An individual identical to Rebecca had utilized a valid ID card to access the premises, proceeding to her former workspace, sifting through files for 40 minutes before departing. It became evident Lily had not fled, she had seized her opportunity. She now masqueraded as Rebecca, assuming her life while the real Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains unresolved to this day. Lily Winters remains at large. Rebecca Thorne opted not to return to her former existence, forging a new identity in an undisclosed location. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk featuring 2 strikingly similar women, Rebecca Thorne and Lily Winters. Occasionally, she scrutinizes their visages, searching for disparities, the subtle distinctions that could differentiate one from the other. The most chilling aspect Shaw imparts to new recruits in the department is not merely resembling someone or sounding like them. It's the desire to become them so fervently that one erases themselves in the process. Identity isn't merely what we present to the world, it's what we safeguard most vigilantly. And sometimes we only realize its worth when someone endeavors to usurp it. Story 11, the hotel stood as a relic of forgotten times, its faded facade whispering tales of transient visitors seeking shelter for only a night. The key was passed to her by the clerk with a peculiar glance, a silent warning lingering in the air. Just avoid the last door on the left, his voice barely above a murmur. Intrigue tugged at her senses. That evening, amidst the hushed shadows of the hallway, she found herself drawn to it. The brass handle chilled her fingertips, the door blending seamlessly among its companions until she pressed close, listening intently. From the other side, a breath, a presence. Detective Morgan Reed roused from slumber, entering the crime scene shrouded in a yellow tape barrier. The metallic tang of blood assaulted her senses, a familiar scent of dread. Stains marred the carpet, a stark contrast to the untouched bed and pristine bathroom. Amidst this discord, a young woman lay lifeless, her golden locks splayed like a halo, eyes fixed on eternity. Reed knelt beside the victim, mindful not to disturb the markers that dotted the room. Third one this season, the technician's voice devoid of emotion. Same pattern, Reed's silence spoke volumes. The victim clothed in elegance, out of place in this forgotten inn. An open handbag, contents untouched. This was not a crime of theft. Another force drove the tragedy. The hotel manager lingered, anxiety etched on his pallid face. She arrived alone, paid in cash. I never imagined, his voice faltered. The maid discovered her during routine cleaning. Reed surveyed the scene, no signs of forced entry, no struggle evident. The victim knew her assailant, willingly or by acquaintance. Back at headquarters, Reed pinned photos to the board, 3 women alike in features, found in obscure motels. Speculation swirled, whispers of a predator lurking in the shadows. Autopsy reports in, Hayes announced, dropping a file on Reed's desk. Strangulation by hand, no trace of DNA, not a crime of opportunity. Reed pondered, sensing a personal vendetta at play. Days blurred in the relentless pursuit of truth. Surveillance footage yielded no clues. The victim, Elaine Werner, a meticulous analyst, a puzzle in this grim setting. A breakthrough surfaced during a conversation with Werner's sister. She mentioned a man from work, the sister confided, hands trembling. Secretive, complicated, perhaps married, Reed lined in, seeking a name. Just see, the sister whispered. The focus shifted to Werner's workplace, where secrecy veiled her interactions. A business card led to Charles Emerson, a senior executive. Emerson exuded charm and innocence, but Reed sensed a facade crumbling beneath the surface. Emerson's calm demeanor cracked under scrutiny. We were involved, but it ended. She threatened my life, his admission tinged with defiance. Reed probed, unraveling a web of deceit. Forensics linked him to the crime scene, a trail of evidence painting a damning portrait. Emerson's obsession with women resembling his wife, his meticulous planning of encounters, and ruthless erasure of traces pointed to a chilling truth. In the interrogation room, his facade fractured. They jeopardized everything, his voice hollow. The trial, a spectacle of justice served, unveiled a void in Emerson's soul, unrepentant, devoid of remorse. The media dubbed it the door on the left case, a tale dissected by experts and enthusiasts. For Reed, closure remained elusive. In the quiet of hotel corridors, she counted doors, pondering the mysteries concealed within. 3 keys, relics of a dark chapter, lay dormant in evidence, reminders of doors once opened, revealing horrors never to be erased. Story 12. The tale began with the new residents brushing off the strange crackling of the outdated intercom system in their Victorian manner. To them, it seemed like a harmless quirk, a relic from a bygone era that had been rewired but left forgotten. However, one fateful night, curiosity got the best of the husband, prompting him to press the button that set off a chain of eerie events. A voice, barely audible, whispered through the crackling speaker, sending shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" The husband recoiled, his hands trembling as his wife, who stood behind him, denied ever uttering those words. The manor, surrounded by ancient oak trees, exuded an air of mystery, with its weathered exterior concealing a modernized interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker, the new owners, had been drawn to the property not only for its history, but also for the vintage intercom system that connected all the rooms. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a possible break-in, but there was a palpable sense that there was more to the story than met the eye. Daniel, with a solemn expression, led the detective through the grand foyer, recounting how the strange occurrences had started with the intercom, a progression from static to whispers, and eventually full sentences that both he and his wife had heard. In the living room, Meredith sat rigid on an antique sofa, her grip tight on a steaming mug she dared not touch. Without preamble, she revealed a chilling discovery behind a wall that had been opened up during a renovation project, an old leather-bound journal belonging to a woman named Alina, the previous owner of the house. The journal chronicled Alina's suspicions about her husband Vincent's sinister intentions, with a final entry dating back 30 years. As the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that Vincent and Alina Blackwood had indeed resided in the house, but Alina had mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Forensic analysis of human remains found beneath the garden shed confirmed that the skeleton belonged to a woman who had suffered a fatal blow to the head. The discovery of a wedding band inscribed with "To Alina, my eternal love," further implicated Vincent in his wife's tragic demise. Vincent Blackwood, now a frail elderly man residing in a care facility, calmly confessed to the murder, attributing it to his wife's incessant presence through the intercom system that he had tried to silence. His elaborate ruse of fabricating Alina's departure and living a lie for decades unraveled as the truth came to light. As Vincent faced justice for his heinous crime, Daniel and Meredith, unable to shake off the darkness that had tainted their home, decided to sell the property. Before bidding farewell, they held a poignant memorial for Alina in the restored garden, bidding her spirit peace. The eerie whispers of the intercom, a constant reminder of the past, were silenced as the new owners removed the vintage system during renovations. However, faint static and whispers were reported by workers during the removal process, dismissed as mere interference. Detective Reeves, closing the Blackwood case file, pondered on how the house had woven its own tale of justice, ensuring that Alina's voice was finally heard across time. The manor, now devoid of its dark secret, stood as a silent witness to the tragic events that had unfolded within its walls, a chilling reminder that some mysteries can never truly be silenced. Story 13. In the quiet of the night, a gentle flicker danced across the baby monitor's screen, a subtle anomaly that caught the mother's attention. At first, she brushed it off as mere interference, a glitch in the technology. But then a crackling sound broke through the silence and a hushed voice whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill crept down her spine, sending shivers through her body. In a heartbeat, she dashed to her son's room, heart racing with dread, only to find the crib empty, a void where her precious child should have been. The window stood closed, the door securely locked. The only unsettling presence was a plush rabbit lying askew on the floor, its dark, glassy eyes fixed on her in an unblinking gaze. Rebecca's screams pierced the night, tearing through the stillness until her voice grew hoarse and raw. The neighbors, roused by her anguished cries, summoned help, and soon emergency services descended upon the scene. They discovered her in the nursery, clasping the stuffed rabbit to her chest, lost in a world of agony and confusion. Samuel, her 4-month-old son, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that echoed with unanswered questions. As the investigation unfolded, puzzled detectives found themselves at a loss. There were no signs of forced entry, no disturbances in the meticulously kept home. The security system stood vigilant, its records yielding no clues to the mysterious disappearance. Suspicion veiled Rebecca, her struggles with postpartum depression casting a shadow over her grief-stricken demeanor. Whispers of doubt fluttered through the community, casting shadows of suspicion on a mother's shattered world. Then a glimmer of hope emerged amidst the darkness. A forensic breakthrough revealed microscopic fibers on the windowsill, foreign to the household, a silent clue that hinted at an intruder's clandestine entry. The investigation shifted its focus, unraveling a web of secrets and deceit that lurked in the shadows. Security footage unveiled a cloaked figure moving with stealth, leaving behind whispers of a presence that defied logic. With Daniel's return, the truth began to unfurl like a dark tapestry woven with betrayal. Unusual calluses adorned his hands, a silent testament to a hidden pastime, rock climbing, a hobby that masked a darker truth. Financial records whispered of insidious plans, a life insurance policy taken out on Samuel, a child caught in the crosshairs of greed and deception. And as the puzzle pieces fell into place, a chilling revelation emerged. The baby monitor, once a silent witness, became a beacon of truth. Hacked and manipulated, its digital threads led investigators to a basement where a ghost from the past cradled the missing child. Elaine, a shadowy figure with vacant eyes, surrendered to the harsh light of justice, her motives shrouded in a veil of obsession and loss. The trial echoed with the weight of betrayal, as encrypted messages and damning evidence painted a portrait of deceit. Daniel and Elaine stood at the precipice of judgment, their fates intertwined by a web of lies that unraveled in the harsh light of truth. The courtroom fell silent as the baby monitor's whispered secrets echoed through the chamber, a haunting reminder of the night that changed everything. In the aftermath, Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, a fresh chapter untainted by the shadows of the past. The world shifted, its gaze turning towards the vulnerabilities of modern technology, the dangers that lurked in the digital realm. And as time passed, Samuel grew, oblivious to the darkness that once threatened to consume him, a testament to resilience in the face of adversity. Rebecca kept the stuffed rabbit, a silent sentinel of the past, its glassy eyes a reminder of a night veiled in mystery. Locked away in a box, it bore witness to the truth that lingered in the shadows, a truth that no one could erase. The baby monitor had spoken, its whispers carrying a tale of deception and redemption, a story etched in the quiet hum of the night. Story 14. The town never spoke of the house on the edge of the woods. It stood solitary, its windows dark, its porch weary under the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, no one recalled its origins. Yet when a band of hikers strayed too near, they glimpsed something peculiar, names etched into the wooden siding, carved deep like omens. At the foot of the list, new and untouched, was a name alien to them all, until one of them murmured, voice quivering, "That's mine." In the dead of night, a call came through, Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing incident. The voice at the other end belonged to Mason Wright, the foremost hiker who stumbled upon his name etched into the forsaken abode. The responding officers anticipated nothing more than juvenile mischief, maybe a jest among comrades, but what they encountered defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as nightfall draped the forest. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the aged front of the structure. The names 27 in total etched vertically down the eastern wall. Some had faded with time, nearly vanishing against the weathered wood. Others remained sharp, as if freshly carved. And at the base, Mason Wright, the incision still bearing traces of new sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his breath forming mist in the cold air. "I can't fathom how anyone would know my name." The inquiry commenced with checks into the backgrounds of each listed name. The findings sent shivers through the detective team. Every name belonged to an individual reported missing over the past 4 decades. Some cases had grown cold, others remained active. Yet all shared a chilling similarity: the persons had vanished while hiking solo. Forensic experts photographed each carving, noting the varied depths, techniques, and weathering patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a missing persons case from 37 years past. The case files recounted a young woman who ventured into those woods and never returned. Search parties unearthed naught but a lone hiking boot beside a stream. Detective Keller extensively interrogated Mason. His tale remained unwavering. He bore no ties to the area beyond this hiking expedition with 4 college companions. They had selected the trail randomly, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his background linked him to any of the other names on the wall. Attention shifted to Mason's comrades. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, supplied images captured during their hike. Upon scrutiny, analysts spotted something unsettling. A blurred figure loomed in the background of 3 separate photos. The form resembled a tall, slender man, ever partly obscured by trees. "We never encountered anyone else on the trail," Emily protested. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller ordered a search of the house's interior. The structure seemed abandoned. Dust blanketed every surface. Furniture lay shattered and strewn. Yet in the basement, officers stumbled upon a disturbing sight. Belongings of the missing hikers sat arranged neatly on wooden shelves. Watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a corresponding name from the exterior wall. Technicians meticulously cataloged every item. Beneath ultraviolet light, bloodstains emerged on the concrete floor, years of marks someone had tried to erase. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled no bodies buried beneath the house, yet cadaver dogs repeatedly signaled near the back of the property where the forest thickened. As the probe intensified, Detective Keller observed peculiar conduct from Mason Wright. He began reporting odd incidents: whispers outside his flat, footprints in fresh snow leading to his door but not away, silhouettes observing from the street. The department assigned an officer to safeguard him, but Mason spiraled deeper into paranoia. The breakthrough arrived when researchers unearthed land records buried in county archives. The house had belonged to a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood. Neighbors seldom glimpsed him, recounting brief encounters with an unsettlingly tall, gaunt man who shunned conversation. Blackwood vanished without a trace 15 years prior, his disappearance never officially probed. Detective Keller secured a warrant to delve further into the surrounding forest. The search team unearthed a network of rustic hunting blinds strategically stationed along popular hiking routes. Within one, they discovered a journal containing meticulous observations, accounts of hikers, their paths, gear, and routines. The script matched samples from Victor Blackwood's scant records. The entries grew increasingly chilling over time. Early pages delineated hunting methods for animals. Later entries portrayed humans as prey, their behaviors, vulnerabilities, and techniques for their acquisition. The final pages detailed stalking each victim on the wall, including intricate descriptions of how he selected his targets. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned multiple jurisdictions. Helicopters armed with thermal imaging scanned the woods. Tactical teams combed every cave and ravine, yet no trace of the suspect surfaced. Mason Wright ceased answering calls. Officers dispatched to his flat found the door unlocked, the rooms deserted. On his chamber wall, freshly carved, was a single sentence: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The search for Mason persisted for weeks to no avail. Then, during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's abode, forensic technicians made a ghastly find. Concealed behind a false wall in the basement, they uncovered a small workshop containing woodworking tools, jars of wood preservatives, and a freshly carved piece of wood bearing a new name not yet affixed to the exterior wall. Detective Keller recognized the name instantly. It belonged to the lead forensic technician who had processed the house during the initial investigation. The technician had called in sick that morning and was unreachable by phone. Authorities established an unbroken surveillance perimeter around the house. Camera systems recorded every approach. Motion sensors monitored for intrusions. The trap was set. 3 nights later, sensors sounded an alert. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, impossibly tall and slender, moving with unnatural fluidity. The figure advanced toward the house directly, seemingly indifferent to the surveillance. As tactical teams closed in, the cameras briefly lost connection. When the system reconnected, the figure had vanished. The house remains under constant surveillance to this day. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation persists, with fresh resources allocated as similar disappearances are reported in other wooded areas. The names on the wall have become legendary among law enforcement. Some officers refuse to utter them aloud, others steer clear of the case entirely. And local hikers now steer clear of the house, fearful that mentioning it might somehow add their names to that dreadful list, the names unspoken by all. Story 15, The Discovery in the Attic. In the depths of the attic, nestled beneath a worn and forgotten blanket, they stumbled upon it. A porcelain doll, ancient and fragile, with its vivid blue eyes staring out unwaveringly. Sarah and Michael, a young couple who had recently become the owners of the Victorian house, were bewildered by the doll's sudden appearance. They chuckled it off as just another relic of the past, a mere antique lost in time. But that night, as they retired to bed, a strange sensation lingered in the air. The stillness of the night seemed to stretch endlessly, wrapping around them like a heavy cloak. And when dawn broke, the doll was no longer in the attic where they had left it. Instead, it sat ominously at the foot of their bed, its presence sending shivers down their spines. Sarah and Michael had been captivated by the allure of the house, with its intricate woodwork and enigmatic aura, purchased at an auction that hinted at a troubled history. Little did they know that they would soon find themselves entwined in the very narrative they sought to uncover. Detective Rachel Winters was summoned on a crisp autumn morning to investigate a chilling scene. In the master bedroom, a woman's lifeless body lay contorted in an unnatural pose, her eyes wide with fear etched upon her face. Nearby in the hallway, the male victim appeared as though he had been fleeing from an unseen terror. The lack of any signs of forced entry or struggle puzzled the seasoned detective. As Detective Winters meticulously combed through the evidence, a pattern began to emerge. Witnesses spoke of shadows lurking behind windows and eerie laughter resonating through the empty house at odd hours. Traces of antique fabrics were discovered throughout the property, particularly concentrated around the victims, and the attic an unsettling link to the mysterious doll. The investigation delved into the house's dark past, unearthing a series of deaths under murky circumstances spanning decades. Each tragedy bore similarities, hinting at a malevolent force lurking within the very walls of the house. A newspaper clipping alluded to a tragic tale of a doll maker and his daughter, shrouded in suspicion and tragedy. As Detective Winters pieced together the puzzle, a chilling revelation surfaced. Each victim had tampered with the attic space, unknowingly awakening something malevolent that dwelled within. Old photographs unveiled the doll maker's eerie creations, with one doll bearing an uncanny resemblance to the one that had haunted Sarah and Michael. Infrared scans unveiled a haunting trail of invisible handprints leading from the attic to the master bedroom, accompanied by an enigmatic residue that defied classification. A distant relative of the doll maker shared whispers of dark rituals and the binding of spirits to inanimate objects, hinting at a sinister truth that defied logic. The case took a perplexing turn as the doll vanished from police custody, leaving behind a trail of inexplicable events. Detective Winters, shaken by the inexplicable occurrences, chose to retire early, carrying with her a photograph that held the key to a mystery she could never fully unravel. The house changed hands once more, its haunted legacy lingering in the whispers of the neighborhood. The attic remained untouched, a silent witness to the enigmatic forces that lay dormant within. And on quiet nights, a faint shadow would dance behind the attic window, accompanied by the soft laughter of a child, a spectral reminder of a past that refused to be forgotten. Story 16, the wooden plank shifted beneath her weight, catching her attention with a subtle creak. Intrigued, she knelt down and traced the edges of the loose board, sensing a hidden space waiting to be discovered. Gently, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow chamber beneath her home. Dust particles danced in the beam of her flashlight as she peered into the depths. At first, only shadows greeted her, but soon shapes emerged: a mattress, a chair, and a worn notebook tucked in the corner, its pages filled with repetitions of her own name. Detective Morgan Reed observed silently as Sarah Coleman gazed into the abyss below, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. It wasn't just a hidden room they had unearthed. It was a violation of her sanctuary, a breach of safety that shook her to the core. "Don't disturb anything," Detective Reed cautioned, her voice steady yet commanding. With a click of her flashlight, more of the concealed space was revealed, walls adorned with surveillance photos capturing Sarah's every move, walking, socializing, existing. A shrine of obsession meticulously crafted right beneath her unsuspecting feet. Sarah had purchased the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly man named Walter Green, a recluse who had passed away with no known kin. The property had sat empty for months before she made it her own. The real estate listing had painted it as charming and ready for a touch of renovation. No hint of the hidden chamber lurking beneath the surface. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah murmured. "Neighbors said he kept to himself. I was told that basement access was sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report claimed." Crime scene investigators arrived, their equipment echoing against the wooden floors as they entered the hidden room. Every detail was documented, evidence meticulously logged, and the mattress, chair, and notebook carefully extracted. Forensic analysis unveiled a plethora of fingerprints, all belonging to Walter Green. What sent shivers down their spines was the timeline they reconstructed. Through utility records and dated photographs, they discovered Walter had been shadowing Sarah for at least 3 years before his demise. He had been present in her everyday life, unseen and unnoticed. This level of fixation often escalates, the department psychologist explained during a debrief. From daydreams to concrete plans, the hidden room suggests he was preparing for something more direct. Detective Reed's investigation took a new twist when she interviewed Walter's former coworker from the local shopping center's maintenance department. Anxiety etched lines on the man's face as he played with his wedding band. Walter mentioned her from time to time, he confessed. Said she reminded him of someone. I thought it was harmless infatuation. I never imagined. His voice trailed off, eyes fixed on his hands. Did he ever talk about any schemes involving her? Reed probed. Not directly, but he had this phrase he'd repeat about how she's meant for me. I brushed it off as idle chatter. With a warrant in hand, Reed searched Walter's untouched work locker, finding a key that unlocked a storage unit registered in his name. As the metal door screeched open, a replica of Sarah's former apartment came into view, furniture, decor, even a mannequin mimicking her appearance. A calendar marked with a chilling date just a week after Walter's passing bore the word "together" in bold red ink. It was a replica of her life, meticulously recreated by a man consumed by delusion. Walter's troubled past emerged a history of fixation and a period of institutionalization for erotomania, a disorder where the afflicted believes in a mutual love that doesn't exist. Released back into society, he lived quietly until Sarah unknowingly triggered his dormant obsession. Spread across the conference table were photos of the crime scene. He departed convinced of a special bond between them. In his mind, they were fated to be united, Reed remarked. Is there any chance she encountered him unknowingly, sparking this fixation? Another detective inquired. Reed shook her head. No traces we could find. Sometimes obsessions need only a whisper to take root, a fleeting glance, a chance encounter. For someone with his background, that could be all it took. Sarah made the choice to sell the house, unable to shake the feeling of unease it now held. During her final walkthrough with the realtor, she stood in the living room, enveloped in her own arms. I can't help but wonder what might have transpired if he hadn't passed away when he did, she admitted softly. How long would I have dwelled here, unaware of his watchful eyes, unaware of the secrets concealed beneath my very feet? The case was closed following Walter's demise, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, even though the abduction never materialized. The psychological evaluation painted a chilling picture of Walter's designs to confine Sarah either in the hidden chamber or the storage unit. Sarah relocated, altering her routines and guarding her privacy with newfound vigilance. Detective Reed occasionally checked in from afar, a silent acknowledgement of how narrowly Sarah had avoided a tragic fate. The cottage passed into the hands of a young couple oblivious to its haunting past. The hidden room was sealed off, the floorboards replaced, life moving forward. Yet for those privy to the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor lingered as a somber reminder of the unseen perils that linger, of monsters who elude capture, and of victims who nearly meet their end without ever knowing. Story 17. The new occupants believed it to be just peeling wallpaper. Yet as they carefully stripped away the layers, a hidden narrative unveiled itself. Scrawled in ink repeatedly was a name. The same name covering every surface, written in a frenzied, uneven hand. It was not the name of the prior residents. It was absent from all official records. However, a search online led them to a lone result, a cold case of a vanished person from long ago. And the most chilling part. The woman in the old photograph bore an uncanny resemblance to the one who had sold them the house. Michael and Sarah Klein had no immediate plans to renovate the Victorian-era dwelling. The enchanting old abode came at a surprisingly modest price, and the previous owner, a reserved, graceful woman with silver-streaked dark locks, had seemed keen to part with it, mentioning her impending move across the country. The couple had been captivated by the home's charisma, its intricate woodwork and lofty ceilings whispering tales of a bygone era. It all began with a simple water stain in the master bedroom. Sarah spotted a yellowing discoloration seeping through the floral wallpaper. When Michael probed it with his fingers, the paper yielded, revealing another layer beneath. Intrigued, they cautiously peeled back the damaged section. The first layer unveiled outdated paisley designs from what they presumed to be the 1970s. Beneath that, striped paper from an earlier time. But as they continued, a surprise awaited them in the third layer down. Writing, dark ink against faded beige paper. Not random markings, but a name, Alina Winters, repeated endlessly, the script growing increasingly desperate and erratic across the wall. "Who is Alina Winters?" Sarah murmured, her fingers trailing the frenzied writing. The discovery left them unsettled. That night, Michael sat at their kitchen island, laptop aglow, scouring property records. The house had changed hands multiple times over the years. No trace of Alina Winters appeared in any documents. The woman who had sold them the house was registered as Margaret Cavendish. Sarah joined him, clutching a coffee mug. Try searching just the name. The internet search yielded sparse results until they stumbled upon an archived newspaper article, digitized from microfiche. Alina Winters, 27 years old, reported missing in the winter. The monochrome photograph depicted a young woman with dark hair and distinctive eyes that mirrored those of Margaret Cavendish, the woman who had handed them the keys to the house. "This article dates back 30 years, Michael spoke, his voice barely above a whisper amidst the hum of the refrigerator. Margaret could be the right age now, but Sarah swallowed hard. The missing woman never received closure. No body found, no suspects named. Their interest morphed into an all-consuming fixation. Sarah reached out to the previous homeowners, tracing back through county archives. The renovations paused as they delved into their impromptu inquiry during the evenings. They discovered that Margaret Cavendish had owned the house for merely 7 months before selling it to them, a peculiar occurrence given the extensive paperwork and inspections they had undergone. The retired detective assigned to the cold case had long left the force. When Michael tracked him down, the man immediately recollected the investigation. Alina Winters was reported missing by her roommate. No signs of struggle at her apartment. Her car found abandoned near the highway. The case went cold quickly, no witnesses, no evidence of foul play, just disappeared. Michael hesitated before inquiring, "Did you ever interview a Margaret Cavendish?" Silence lingered on the line. "Number name doesn't ring a bell. Why?" Upon revealing their discovery and sharing photos of both women, the retired detective pledged to make inquiries. Shortly after, a current detective reached out, requesting permission to examine the wall. Their abode turned into an active crime scene. Forensic teams meticulously documented and extracted sections of the wallpaper. Analysis indicated that the ink dated back approximately 30 years. Handwriting analysts compared the wall inscriptions to samples of Alina's handwriting from old journals provided by her family. The findings were inconclusive. Meanwhile, Sarah stumbled upon a concealed compartment beneath the bedroom closet's floorboards. Inside lay a driver's license belonging to Alina Winters, alongside various identification cards under different names. All featured the same face with subtle variations: hair color, glasses, expressions. The final ID, Margaret Cavendish, matched their home's cellar. When authorities attempted to locate Margaret using the forwarding address she had provided, it led to nothing. Her phone number was defunct. The bank account that received their payment had been closed. Margaret Cavendish had vanished, much like Alina Winters had decades earlier. Then a revelation surfaced. altering the investigation fundamentally. DNA analysis of hair strands recovered deep within the wall cavity matched Alina Winter's. However, fingerprints lifted from the writing matched another profile, entirely one belonging to a psychiatric patient named Rebecca Eldridge, who had been institutionalized shortly after Alina's disappearance. Rebecca Eldridge had been diagnosed with severe dissociative identity disorder. She had eluded the institution multiple times over the years. Her medical records unveiled something chilling. One of her documented alternate personalities referred to herself as Alina. The probe unearthed that Rebecca had been Alina's childhood friend, fixated on her to the point of imitation. When Alina rebuffed her increasingly unsettling advances, something within Rebecca fractured. She assumed Alina's identity literally and metaphorically, and constructed an intricate web of personas to uphold the facade. The scrawled name on the wall symbolized Rebecca's desperate bid to cling to reality, to recollect who she truly was beneath the assumed personas. The wall had become both a confession and a prison, a tangible reflection of her fractured mind. Sarah and Michael observed from their front porch as forensic teams excavated specific sections of their backyard, guided by ground-penetrating radar that had detected anomalies below the surface. The cold case had grown hot all of a sudden. The remains unearthed from beneath the garden belonged to Alina Winters. Rebecca Eldridge, known to Michael and Sarah as Margaret Cavendish, was eventually apprehended while attempting to cross the border under yet another identity. When confronted with evidence, the persona presenting as Margaret crumbled, and another emerged, one who admitted to killing Alina in a fit of jealousy. The names on the wall had served as both a memorial and a manifestation of guilt, inscribed by a fractured mind attempting to preserve shreds of truth despite itself. Justice arrived 3 decades late for Alina's family. For Michael and Sarah, their dream home became infamous, a footnote in true crime history, forever identified as the house where the walls themselves confessed to a tragedy. Story 18. The worn envelope sat on the detective's desk, its corners tinged with age, yet the stamp fresh as if just placed there days ago. With a delicate touch, Detective Sarah Morgan unfolded the letter within, revealing a single sheet of paper bearing a message typed in a hurried, uneven script. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a faint dampness, a metallic tang hanging in the air. A reddish smear along the edge caught their attention, distinct from the typed words. It wasn't ink staining the paper. Carefully, Morgan sealed the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved hands moving with practiced precision. The forensics team confirmed her suspicions the stain was human blood, a match to DNA from an unsolved homicide of journalist Rebecca Warren, a case that had lingered in the shadows of the department for years. Rebecca had been found in her apartment, a victim of multiple stab wounds, her laptop missing, her notes scattered, a tragic puzzle hinting at a story gone awry. The arrival of this mysterious letter, simply addressed to Homicide Division, breathed new life into the cold case. Few fingerprints adorned the paper and envelope, only faint smudges hinting that the sender had taken care to avoid leaving a trace. The postmark, however, offered a glimmer of hope, a thread to follow. Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit briefing room, where the walls held the weight of unsolved mysteries past. She pinned the letter's image at the heart of the board, declaring, "This changes everything. Our killer shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in the investigation, studied the letter thoughtfully. "Or perhaps it's a facade, a cruel game of deception," he countered. The forensics team traced the unique typewriter patterns to an antique model long out of production, a rarity not beyond reach. They cast their net wide, reaching out to collectors and shops in search of this elusive machine. As the inquiry gained momentum, they delved into Rebecca's world. Her editor painted a picture of a relentless journalist unearthing corruption, her latest inquiry entwined with a wealthy family embroiled in politics. The sudden passing of the family patriarch had stirred a nest of discord, siblings clashing over a contentious inheritance. In their pursuit of truth, the detectives revisited Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes. His demeanor now betrayed a nervous edge, a tremor in his voice as he revealed, "Rebecca spoke of being followed. I brushed it off as paranoia, a mistake I now regret." While the team probed this new light, a second letter materialized, bearing the same typewritten message, the same unsettling touch of blood. This time the words unveiled more. She delved too deep into the family's secrets. The inheritance, the truth about the old man, it was never meant to spiral out of control. The path led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, stood under scrutiny. Among his trove of antiques gleamed vintage typewriters, a detail that raised eyebrows. His explanations rang rehearsed, too polished to be genuine. A breakthrough emerged when microscopic fibers on the envelopes linked back to custom stationery exclusive to the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. Richard's request for her stationery weeks prior unfurled a tale of deceit. A search of Richard's abode uncovered a hidden chamber adorned with relics of Rebecca's demise: clippings, surveillance, the vintage typewriter, and the blood, a chilling confirmation of its origin. The unexpected link between Richard and Michael unfurled through bank records, transactions whispering of collusion. Michael's confession unfurled a tragic truth, a ploy gone awry, a tale of betrayal. Eleanor's revelation, a clandestine recording capturing Richard's damning words, sealed his fate. Arrested in the midst of escape, Richard stood trial, his protestations drowned by the weight of evidence. The courtroom, heavy with silence, bore witness to justice served. Detective Morgan, a silent sentinel of justice, approached Rebecca's parents with a solemn nod, a gesture of closure in an ocean of grief. The blood-stained letters, now relics of a grim past, lingered in evidence, a testament to the unraveling of a meticulously crafted crime. The case of Rebecca Warren echoed through the halls of detective lore, a poignant reminder that sometimes the key to unlocking a mystery lies not in high-tech marvels, but in the whispers of an old typewriter and the shadow of guilt stalking a killer's soul. Story 19. The aged apartment exuded a sense of history, its time-worn walls echoing with the groans of the heating system and the rattling of pipes. These sounds, though common in such old buildings, held a mysterious quality that piqued curiosity. A young woman residing in one of the units brushed off the noises as part of the building's character until one fateful night when a faint yet distinct voice pierced through the vents, calling out her name in a haunting whisper. Startled, she pressed her ear against the grate, feeling a chill breeze caress her cheek as the voice softly declared, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator with a keen intuition, found herself standing in the center of the vacant apartment where a chilling discovery had been made. The forensic team meticulously combed through the scene, capturing every detail with flashing cameras. The missing woman, Eleanor Reeves, had been absent for a week before her absence was noticed due to a peculiar odor seeping from her unit. What they unraveled within the ventilation system left even the most experienced investigators baffled. Officer Patel, his voice solemn, recounted Eleanor's claims of hearing voices through the vents, dismissed by the building management as mere product of the old building's quirks. Shaw, kneeling beside the vent, observed the deep scratch marks around its edges, indicating a frantic attempt to pry it open from the inside. The pieces of the puzzle began to form a chilling picture of paranoia and dread. Eleanor, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a vibrant presence, had exhibited signs of distress leading up to her disappearance. Her sister, recounting the events that preceded Alina going missing, described her growing paranoia of being watched and spoken to through the vents. Shaw, absorbing these details, scanned the apartment with a newfound sense of unease. The forensic evidence further deepened the mystery, linking fibers from the vent to Alina's belongings and revealing a mysterious fingerprint inside the vent cover. Delving into Alina's phone recordings, Shaw listened to eerie whispers that hinted at a presence lurking within the walls, unseen yet palpable. As the investigation progressed, a troubling pattern emerged. Previous tenants of the building had experienced similar disturbances, with reports of voices, hallucinations, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. The spotlight turned to Harold Weber, the building superintendent, whose demeanor shifted subtly when questioned about the history of apartment 4B. A hidden access panel discovered in Alina's bathroom unveiled a secret passageway within the walls, leading to a narrow maintenance crawl space that provided an unsettling glimpse into the intruder's covert activities. Items found within the passage hinted at a sinister presence of voyeur living within the walls, observing, listening, and whispering. The investigation took a chilling turn when Weber's meticulously organized computer files revealed a disturbing catalog of recordings and personal information on tenants, including Alina. Shaw, disturbed by the depth of Weber's obsession, uncovered a storage unit filled with mementos from past victims, painting a grim picture of his twisted connections. Weber's arrest brought a sense of closure, yet his cryptic words lingered like a haunting echo. The truth behind Alina's fate, revealed by the coroner's findings, painted a tragic picture of manipulation and deception. The trial, a confrontation of horrors, concluded with Weber's conviction, but the echoes of his deeds continued to resonate within the walls of the now vacant apartment building. Despite efforts to erase the past with renovations and new ownership, the building remained tainted by a lingering presence. Residents spoke of strange whispers in the walls, cold drafts carrying unseen voices, and an eerie atmosphere that refused to dissipate. The legacy of fear and paranoia persisted, a reminder that some mysteries are woven into the very fabric of a place, waiting to be unraveled by those willing to listen in the silence of the night. Story 20. In the cool stillness of the attic, Sarah Winters uncovered a forgotten treasure trove of memories. Amongst the dusty boxes and faded trinkets, a cardboard box labeled Memories awaited her touch. Inside, decades-old Polaroids whispered of bygone birthdays and family gatherings frozen in time. Smiling faces, flickering candles, an ordinary tableau, until her gaze settled on a figure lurking in the shadows, a phantom from the past. The man in the background, a spectral presence veiled in mystery, stood just beyond the glow of the candles. He was not part of the family, yet in each photo he drew nearer, his form a mere whisper in the periphery of each captured moment. Sarah's hands trembled as she sifted through the snapshots, feeling the weight of a chilling revelation settle upon her shoulders. Cleaning out her mother's attic after the funeral had seemed a simple task, a bittersweet journey through nostalgia. But now, the photographs became harbingers of a nightmare, each image a breadcrumb leading deeper into a realm of shadows and secrets. She called her father, the tremor in her voice betraying her unease. His breath caught on the other end of the line, a palpable silence before he uttered, "What man? There should be no one but family." Confusion mingled with fear in his tone, mirroring Sarah's own growing dread. Detective Marcus Reed, a stalwart presence amid the shifting shadows of his precinct office, listened as Sarah unfolded the enigma before him. Rain pattered against the window panes, casting ephemeral patterns of light and dark upon the worn photograph spread across his desk. His eyes, weathered yet sharp, traced the progression of the mysterious figure through the snapshots, a sense of intrigue stirring within him. No one recognized the enigmatic stranger who haunted the edges of the images. The progression of his movement through the gatherings, inching ever closer to the children, painted a chilling portrait of deliberate intent. Each photo revealed a subtle shift, a calculated advance towards an unseen goal. The detective's investigation delved deeper, reaching out to those who had been present at the gatherings captured in the Polaroids. But memory failed to unveil the identity of the shadowy figure who had slipped through the cracks of time, leaving no trace save for his ominous presence in the faded photographs. As Sarah uncovered more images in other family albums, the mystery deepened. Different gatherings, different years, yet the same figure lingered in the background, a ghostly specter woven into the fabric of their shared past. With the aid of modern technology, details once obscured by time emerged, hinting at a dark truth hidden beneath the surface of the photographs. Dental records provided a breakthrough, linking the figure in the photos to Robert Keller, a maintenance worker with a sinister past. Disappeared after being questioned in connection with long cold cases of child abductions, Keller had left a trail of unsolved mysteries in his wake. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, connecting the shadowy presence in the photos to a chilling reality of crimes long buried. Sarah sat alone in her apartment, the weight of the revelations pressing upon her. The detective's call had brought news of closure, of remains identified and justice served. Yet the shadows of the past still loomed large, casting a pall over the once cherished memories that now bore the stain of unspeakable horrors. The final birthday photo lay before her, a tableau of innocence tainted by the lurking figure in the background. The candles flickered, casting a warm glow over the frozen smiles of her family, unaware of the sinister presence that had haunted their celebrations. In that moment, as she traced the contours of the phantom's form, Sarah understood the insidious nature of hidden threats that moved unseen through the corridors of time. The box of memories, now transformed into a repository of evidence, bore witness to a truth long shrouded in darkness. The figure in the photos, once a spectral enigma, had been unmasked by the relentless pursuit of justice. Families found closure, though the answers brought little solace in the face of past traumas laid bare. As Sarah gathered the photographs, their shadows whispering of forgotten fears, she knew that some mysteries were meant to be uncovered, even at the cost of shattered illusions. The hidden figures that moved through the tapestry of time, leaving behind only echoes of their presence, had finally been brought to light, a testament to the enduring power of truth in dispelling the shadows of the past. Story 21, the mysterious tale of the haunted mask, unfolded in a small town where the costume shop was on the verge of closure, its shelves lined with remnants of the past. Among the forgotten treasures, a woman discovered a mask that seemed to whisper secrets of a forgotten time. Its delicate features held a lifelike quality that stirred both fascination and unease. As she brought the mask to the counter, the cashier hesitated, a hint of discomfort in his eyes as he murmured, "That's not ours." Perplexed, the woman searched for a tag, but none was to be found. Without much ado, she decided to take the mask home, unaware of the chilling fate that awaited her. That night, a soft rustle of fabric roused her from slumber. A subtle shift in the air drew her gaze to the nightstand, where the mask now sat, its gaze fixed upon her with an eerie intensity. The woman, known as Catherine Reed, was later discovered by a concerned neighbor. The morning light spilled through the half-opened door, illuminating a scene of quiet horror within her home. Catherine lay lifeless on the bedroom floor, the ominous mask missing from its resting place. Detective Morgan arrived at the somber scene as forensics meticulously documented every detail. The rhythmic clicks of the shutters provided a haunting backdrop to the unfolding mystery. Despite the absence of forced entry, the room held a sense of unease, as if an unseen presence lingered in the shadows. The medical examiner's examination yielded no clear cause of death, no visible wounds or signs of struggle, only the frozen mask of terror etched on Catherine's features. The detective, attuned to the subtlest of clues, sensed a deeper truth lurking beneath the surface. Catherine's life as an art appraiser hinted at a keen eye for authenticity, for spotting the subtle discrepancies that betrayed a forgery. Could her demise be linked to a truth she had uncovered, a secret too dangerous to be known? A visit to the costume shop revealed a dark undercurrent shrouding the origins of the mask. The owner's nervous demeanor hinted at a history best left undisturbed, tales of strange occurrences tied to a deceased collector's estate. Forensic analysis unveiled peculiar fibers on Catherine's fingertips, an enigma of human hair and unidentified organic matter, a macabre link to a legacy of inexplicable deaths. Each victim, like Catherine, had crossed paths with a malevolent force, each meeting a fate sealed by terror. In a clandestine meeting with a retired detective, a revelation emerged from the shadows, a journal hidden in Catherine's home, detailing her harrowing descent into a world of ancient symbols and malevolent forces. The mask, a harbinger of doom, a vessel for a malevolent entity seeking a new host. As the investigation delved deeper, a chilling truth emerged, a ritual of soul transference, a cycle of death spanning centuries, with the mask as its silent witness. Surveillance footage captured a spectral figure, donning the mask, moving with a twisted imitation of Catherine's essence. The hunt for the elusive mask led investigators across the country to a vintage shop where it had resurfaced, changing hands unnoticed, slipping back into the shadows of obscurity. The mystery remained unsolved, the mask's dark legacy continuing its macabre dance through time. The detective, haunted by Catherine's journal and the specter of the mask, knew that the cycle would endure, that another unsuspecting soul would awaken to the mask's silent gaze, a harbinger of impending terror. In the dead of night, she felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her, a reminder of the malevolent force that lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim its next victim. The mask, a timeless relic of dread, awaited its next bearer, whispering in the dark, hungry for the essence that lay beyond mortal sight. Story 22. The river flowed gently that morning, its surface smooth as glass, undisturbed by ripples. The fisherman's attention was drawn to a suitcase floating near the shore, almost camouflaged against the stillness of the water. Initially dismissing it as a pile of discarded clothes, he ventured closer, only to be hit by a wave of putrid odor, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. The case was bound by chains, its corners tarnished with rust from the elements. When authorities pried it open, the contents were not what they expected. Inside lay strands of hair, fingers frozen in a haunting grip, and at the very bottom, a chilling message awaited: "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, a delicate handkerchief pressed to her nose as she surveyed the grim discovery. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s with dark locks and now pallid skin marred by water, elicited a sense of melancholy. The meticulous medical examiner meticulously documented every detail before the body was respectfully removed. What struck Mercer most was not just the manner of disposal, but the eerie amount of care given to the victim's appearance, nails impeccably manicured, hair freshly styled, dressed in luxurious garments. It wasn't a hasty act, Mercer remarked, observing the water caressing the muddy banks. It was a deliberate showcase. The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent specializing in high-end properties. Divorced, childless, she resided alone in an affluent neighborhood. Colleagues painted a portrait of a driven, detail-oriented woman who valued her privacy. Her disappearance was reported by her assistant after she failed to show up for a crucial showing to potential wealthy buyers. She wouldn't miss that appointment, the assistant insisted during interviews. That sale would have been her biggest achievement. As investigators combed through Walsh's impeccably kept home, a sense of eerie perfection lingered in the air. Every aspect was flawlessly arranged, from the designer furniture to the meticulously organized meals in the fridge labeled by day. However, a drawer slightly ajar in her home office revealed a hidden leather-bound journal. The final entry sent shivers down the spines of those present. He's watching again. Same car, different plates. Further examination of Walsh's digital footprint uncovered a series of unsettling emails from unknown senders, all bearing the same unsettling message: "I see your perfection." Sent at precise times on various days, these messages, coupled with her online searches for security systems and self-defense tools, painted a harrowing picture. Mercer pieced together these clues, linking the victim's meticulous lifestyle with the disturbing presentation of the crime scene. "Our perpetrator is methodical," she confided in her partner. "This wasn't a crime of passion, it was a meticulously planned ritual." A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source. A local pawnshop owner identified Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace, absent from her belongings. The person who pawned it turned out to be a familiar face: Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker. Surveillance footage revealed Linden's frequent visits to Walsh's building, sometimes with his maintenance cart, other times without, always during her absence. Upon searching Linden's modest abode, investigators unearthed a chilling revelation. The walls were adorned with photographs of Walsh and other women, all sharing an uncanny resemblance, all captured unbeknownst to them. Some images were ominously crossed out in red ink. Walsh was the third victim in his collection. Concealed behind a false wall in Linden's closet laid a shrine of sorts. Personal items belonging to each victim were meticulously arranged: a hairbrush with strands of hair, used tissues stained with lipstick, keys, and receipts. Each collection accompanied by a small notebook detailing daily routines, preferences, and habits. The interrogation room turned icy when Linden was brought in. Despite his unassuming appearance and soft-spoken demeanor, his confession was chillingly matter-of-fact. "They weren't flawless," he finally admitted, his voice void of emotion. "They projected perfection, but I saw through their facades. Catherine's desk drawer was always in disarray. She missed a spot when applying her lipstick. Her perfection was a facade." The search for the two women referenced in Linden's note led authorities to remote locations where 2 additional suitcases were discovered. Each contained women resembling Walsh, all real estate agents known for their meticulous attention to detail and image. During Linden's trial, he sat motionless, his expression vacant as the prosecution detailed his sinister methods. Months of stalking, studying, and ultimately correcting what he perceived as flaws in his victims. The families of the deceased watched in silence as the judge sentenced Linden to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For Detective Mercer, the case was officially closed, yet unanswered questions lingered. What drove Linden's fixation on these particular women? What imperfection within himself was he attempting to rectify through these heinous acts? The river continued its unhurried journey downstream, gradually erasing all traces of the tragedy. However, on Mercer's desk at the precinct lay copies of those haunting notebooks, a stark reminder that beneath the facade of ordinary existence, darkness may lurk. Sometimes the most perilous predators are those concealed in plain sight, patiently observing, awaiting that one flaw to expose itself. Story 23. In the quiet of the night, a mysterious package arrived in the mail, wrapped in plainness, devoid of any hint of its origin. Within the unassuming envelope lay a single brass key, its surface weathered by time's gentle touch. The homeowner, Sarah Miller, held it in her hand, a sense of familiarity tugging at the edges of her consciousness, though she couldn't place why. With a curious heart, she ventured to try the key in every lock she possessed, but each one remained steadfast, unmoved by its touch. It belonged to no door in her home. Perplexed, Sarah set the key upon her coffee table, a silent sentinel in the dimly lit room. And then, as if in response to its presence, the old grandfather clock standing sentinel in the hallway let out a single haunting chime, its gears long seized in stillness. A shiver danced down Sarah's spine as she beheld this inexplicable occurrence. With a cautious heart, she relayed the strange tale to the authorities, a ripple in the still waters of their routine days. At first, the responding officer, a bearer of skepticism honed through years of duty, dismissed her concerns as mere happenstance, a key in the mail, a trivial error. But Sarah's intuition whispered louder than reason, a truth she could not ignore. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key as potential evidence, his actions more to quell Sarah's rising disquiet than from genuine belief in its significance. The brass key found its place in a sterile evidence bag, a small piece in a puzzle yet to reveal its full picture. And so it was that Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator of the Special Victims Unit, found himself face to face with the enigmatic key during the morning's briefing. Though unassuming in appearance, its presence on his desk stirred a disquiet in his soul, a whisper of unease that he could not shake. Background inquiries into Sarah Miller yielded a portrait of an ordinary life, no shadows lurking in her past, no whispers of malfeasance in her present. A retired teacher, widowed, with children scattered across the miles, she bore no marks of suspicion in her financial records or digital footprints. Innocence seemed to cloak her like a shield. The forensic team's efforts to glean information from the key itself bore little fruit, save for Sarah's own fingerprints. The envelope offered no revelations, bearing only a generic postmark from a distant distribution center. DNA remained elusive, trace evidence a ghost in the darkness. The key, a common schlage, showed signs of age and wear, a relic of time's passage. A breakthrough dawned unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to delve into the key's intricate design, running its unique pattern through the department's archives. 7 years prior, a cold case had borne witness to a matching key, a key that unlocked a storage unit harboring sinister secrets. Blood-stained memories, tools of destruction, and haunting images of women unknown had haunted that space. The investigation had faltered then, shackled by the absence of evidence to unmask the perpetrator. Dusty case files whispered of mischances, of trails gone cold. Harmon's fingers traced the faded ink of past investigations, seeking connections that time had obscured. The key led him down a shadowed path, a path that intertwined with Sarah's own. The key held secrets long buried, a key to a chamber of horrors concealed within the recesses of a suburban neighborhood's facade. As the investigation spiraled outward, Sarah's world began to shrink, walls closing in on the sanctuary of her home. Locks were reinforced, security systems upgraded, a futile attempt to stave off the encroaching darkness. Questions hung heavy in the air, a fog of uncertainty that refused to dissipate. Why had the key found its way to Sarah Miller's door? What unseen hands had guided its journey to her? Detective Harmon pondered these mysteries, each answer leading to more questions, a labyrinth with no end in sight. A fresh analysis of ancient evidence breathed life into the stagnant case, expanding the horizons of possibility. DNA samples, once partial and inconclusive, now danced with promise under the glow of modern technology. Genealogical databases whispered of distant connections, threads that led to Harold Jenkins, a specter from the past. Harold Jenkins, quiet neighbor, unassuming figure, harbinger of unspeakable horrors. His shadow stretched across the years, casting a pall over Sarah's world. A substitute teacher with a penchant for invisibility, he had slipped through the cracks of memory, a ghost in plain sight. The hunt for Jenkins unfurled like a tapestry of dread, each thread a reminder of lives lost to the void. His trail, a winding path of false identities and hidden truths, led investigators to a cabin nestled in the embrace of nature's solitude. Beneath the floorboards lay a chamber of nightmares, a room adorned with keys, a macabre collection of lives interred in silence. The keys, each bearing a name and date, whispered tales of tragedy to the walls that held them. 5 women, faces frozen in eternal slumber, stared back from photographs tacked to the walls. Their stories, etched in blood and tears, unfolded before the eyes of justice, demanding retribution. As the excavation unfolded, the earth yielded its grim harvest, bodies long forgotten, souls denied their rest. Sarah, cocooned in a web of protection, watched from afar as the tendrils of horror reached out, seeking justice in a world gone awry. The manhunt for Jenkins spanned the breadth of the nation, a shadow play of cat and mouse in the wilderness. The press christened him the Keymaster, a name that echoed through the corridors of fear, a specter haunting the collective consciousness. In the heart of the forest, a solitary figure moved with purpose, a phantom in the fading light. The wildlife photographer's lens captured a glimpse of Jenkins, his form a blur against the backdrop of nature's embrace. Authorities mobilized, a net closing around the fugitive, a dance of death and redemption on the edge of the abyss. The final act played out in the shadow of a tower, its walls a fortress against the encroaching truth. Negotiations faltered, words lost in the chasm of despair. And then, in a moment of silence, Jenkins's final note echoed through the void, a testament to his twisted legacy. In his journal, a voice from beyond the grave addressed Sarah directly, a chilling reminder of the darkness that had crept to her door. The truth unveiled, a tapestry of horror woven with threads of despair and longing. Jenkins's final act, a symphony of sorrow, a requiem for the lost souls that had crossed his path. As the dust settled, 32 names stood as testament to his reign of terror, each life a candle snuffed out in the darkness. Families wept for the lost, their grief a river without end. Sarah, a mere bystander in the grand theater of fate, bore witness to the aftermath of a storm she could never have foreseen. And so, in the silence of an evidence locker, a collection of brass keys lay dormant, a reminder of lives cut short, destinies unfulfilled. Each key a door to the unknown, a portal to the shadows that lurked beneath the veneer of normalcy. Jenkins's legacy, a stain upon the fabric of time, a scar that would never fully heal. Story 24, the old library faced its final days, marked for demolition. Workers toiled tirelessly, nearing the end when a momentous discovery halted their progress. Amidst the dusty bookshelves, a hidden latch was stumbled upon, revealing a passage shrouded in mystery. With a gentle click, the bookcase swung open, exposing a narrow path leading to a forgotten chamber. The air within was heavy with the weight of time, untouched by human hands for decades. In the center of the room, a solitary chair stood bolted to the floor, a silent sentinel in the dim light. And etched repeatedly on the walls, a haunting message echoed, "I am still here." The construction foreman, sensing unease, swiftly contacted the authorities. What began as a routine demolition swiftly unraveled into a tale of darkness and secrets. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator, found himself facing a puzzle unlike any other in his long career. Standing at the threshold of the hidden room, his flashlight pierced the shadows, revealing the chilling message that adorned the walls. "Secure the scene," Walsh commanded, his voice resonating in the enclosed space. "No one disturbs a thing until forensics arrive." The history of the building whispered of a past intertwined with tragedy. Once owned by the influential Harrington family, the library's donation to the public followed the mysterious disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanishing without a trace during her final year of college, the only remnants left behind were her abandoned car near the woods. Despite exhaustive searches and inquiries, the truth remained elusive. The prevailing belief pointed to a voluntary departure, yet her family clung to the belief of a darker fate. As forensic experts delved into the hidden chamber, a macabre truth began to unfurl. Traces of hair and fibers embedded in the chair, alongside faint hints of blood and skin cells in the wall scratches, hinted at a grim reality. The evidence suggested a young woman had suffered within those walls, struggling against unseen restraints. Walsh, driven by a relentless curiosity, delved deeper into the Harrington family's past. The timing of the library's donation after Rebecca's disappearance struck a dissonant chord. Further revelations painted a sinister picture. The contractor responsible for the hidden room's construction was closely tied to Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and family patriarch. Financial records hinted at a web of deceit and hidden motives. Interviews with former library staff unveiled a veil of ignorance shrouding the dark chamber. Maxwell's peculiar attachment to the section, his insistence on its preservation, hinted at a deeper, more sinister truth. And as DNA evidence tied Rebecca to the hidden room, a dreadful realization took root. Rebecca had not fled. She had been ensnared behind that very bookshelf, possibly by her own flesh and blood. Armed with a warrant, detectives descended upon the Harrington estate, unearthing a damning journal hidden within Maxwell's study. The pages chronicled a descent into obsession, culminating in a chilling ultimatum. Maxwell's veneer of innocence shattered upon confrontation with the damning evidence. His carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing a man consumed by fear and greed. She threatened to expose everything, he confessed, the weight of his sins heavy in his words. The truth spilled forth, a tale of betrayal and murder. Excavation beneath the hidden room's floorboards unveiled a grim truth: Rebecca's remains, clad in a silver bracelet, a poignant reminder of a life cut short. The Harrington family, once pillars of the community, bore witness to Maxwell's reckoning. Justice, delayed but not denied, found its mark. The library, once slated for destruction, now stood as a monument to a life lost and a truth unearthed. Flowers adorned its entrance, a silent tribute to a soul silenced by treachery. In a somber twist of fate, Rebecca's echoing words, "I am still here," ensured her legacy endured, a beacon of hope in the shadows, guiding justice to its rightful place. Story 25. She entered the old house, dust dancing in the musty air. Abandoned for years, its faded walls and draped furniture told tales of neglect. Every step felt like a frozen moment in time, a pause in the universe except for the doors. Each one she opened led her back to the parlor, a perpetual loop of familiarity. No escape, no exit, just a continuous return to where she began. When she turned to leave, the front door had vanished, leaving her trapped in the eerie stillness. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless body changed the narrative of the Victorian house from mere curiosity to a haunting crime scene. Detective Sarah Lind observed in silence as forensic experts moved through the dim spaces like silent specters. The house had gained a reputation in the town, a place where compasses spun aimlessly, where whispers of unseen eyes watching lingered. Now, it held secrets darker than mere urban legends. Preliminary findings suggest she passed 3 days ago, the medical examiner murmured softly. The cause appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan's body was found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, a serene expression on her face, hands neatly folded in her lap. No signs of struggle, no marks of resistance. The scene exuded a chilling calmness that unsettled even the most seasoned investigators. Who discovered the body? Lind inquired, flipping through her notes. A real estate agent showing the property, her partner replied. They stumbled upon her, mistaking her for a trespasser until they drew closer. The house had remained uninhabited since the passing of its previous owner, the leaner Blackwood, nearly 5 years prior. Legal disputes had left the property in a state of abandonment, unwanted, unsold, and mostly forgotten, except by the curious and the daring. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis, was known for her meticulous nature, ambition, and fascination with spaces defying conventional norms. The allure of the enigmatic Victorian, notorious for disorienting its visitors, must have been irresistible to her curious mind. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days ago, Lind noted. Morgan mentioned visiting the house where people get lost for her research. Investigation unveiled that Morgan had frequented the house in the weeks leading to her demise. Her journal entries chronicled peculiar acoustics, sudden drops in temperature, and doors that seemed to lead to different places with each opening. In her final entry, she discussed bringing specialized equipment to capture what she termed spatial anomalies. Yet, this equipment was nowhere to be found. The autopsy uncovered an unexpected revelation: traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, a substance linked to certain shamanic practices. While known to induce disorientation and vivid visions, the amount detected was insufficient to cause death. She wasn't one to indulge in recreational substances, her boyfriend affirmed during questioning. Morgan was meticulous in her methods. She wouldn't have jeopardized her perception intentionally. Digital forensics unearthed remnants of deleted messages on Morgan's phone. Dialogues with an individual who shared her fascination with the house, someone claiming to grasp its enigmatic nature. The exchanges grew increasingly intimate and cryptic. The house retains its memories, one message revealed. It yearns for someone to comprehend. The trail led investigators to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian who had corresponded with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial phenomena had captivated her, transcending professional boundaries into a more personal realm. Reeves appeared genuinely devastated by her demise when questioned. The house has a reputation, he explained. The original architect wove optical illusions and false perspectives into its design, meant to confuse and disorient. Morgan believed there was a deeper layer of truth beyond mere tricks of architecture. However, Reeves possessed a solid alibi for the time of Morgan's passing. Surveillance footage placed him giving a lecture at a university symposium hours away. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source: Alina Blackwood's grandson residing overseas. Contacted by investigators, he unveiled a hidden family secret veiled through generations. My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to perish in that house, he revealed. Others followed, always found in the parlor, always at peace. The family called it the claiming. He provided journals spanning decades, chronicling deaths initially attributed to natural causes like heart failure or strokes. The pattern was unmistakable. Individuals spending time within the house eventually succumbed to what the family cryptically termed the influence. A secondary search of the property unveiled a concealed compartment behind the parlor hearth. Inside lay Morgan's missing equipment and something more. A small chamber harbored artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, meticulously arranged in a precise geometric configuration. At the center sat a weathered figurine, its features smoothed by generations of touch. Analysis identified the carving as a representation of a deity linked to liminal spaces, gateways between worlds. Traces of the alkaloid found in Morgan's system clung to the artifacts. The case took a darker turn when forensic analysis of dust patterns hinted at another presence during Morgan's demise. Partial fingerprints, alien to Morgan's or any known visitor, were extracted from doorknobs throughout the house. 3 weeks into the investigation, Adam Reeves was discovered lifeless in his residence. Like Morgan, he was seated facing the entrance, a serene countenance, the same alkaloid detected in his system. Clenched in his hand was a key that matched no lock in his dwelling but fit snugly into the concealed compartment within the Victorian. In his final correspondence, sent to himself as a testament, Reeves inscribed, "The house doesn't bind you physically, it ensnares your perception. Morgan was correct, the doors lead to where they always have, but something deceives you into circling back. Once you fathom the truth, you can depart at will, yet by then you may choose not to." The case remains open officially, labeled as mysterious deaths under scrutiny. The Victorian has been condemned, its access prohibited by authorities. Nevertheless, whispers persist of flickering lights within uncertain evenings and of guests who vanish without a trace. Some locals assert that the house claims those who delve too deeply into its mysteries. Others speculate that Morgan and Reeves unveiled something ancient and potent, an existence nestled within the margins of conventional reality. The truth remains as elusive as an escape in a house where all paths lead back to the beginning. Story 26. The vacant apartment held secrets in its silence, whispers of the past lingering in the shadows. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, they expected only neglect and dust, not the heavy weight of mystery that awaited them behind one stubborn door. A closet, locked from within, stood as a sentinel of the unknown. With a reluctant push, the landlord revealed a chilling truth concealed within those walls. Detective Morgan Shaw, seasoned in the art of unraveling enigmas, felt a shiver dance down her spine as she beheld the scene before her. The scratches etched into the wood spoke of a struggle, of a soul confined and fighting against invisible chains. Without words, they painted a haunting picture of captivity and fear. Summoning her partner, Officer Reed, Shaw knew this was no ordinary case. The unread message glowing on the ancient flip phone, its screen a relic frozen in time, whispered accusations that echoed in the dimly lit room. "I know what you did," it taunted, a cryptic clue to a puzzle that begged to be solved. As they delved deeper, the threads of the past began to unravel, revealing a tapestry of deception and tragedy. The previous tenant, Emma Caldwell, a spectral presence in the narrative, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a void in the lives of those who knew her. Forensics unveiled a macabre truth hidden within the confines of the closet. Blood samples intertwined with the scratches, weaving a tale of suffering and despair. Emma's existence, once vibrant, now reduced to mere traces of DNA on the walls of her prison. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, forming a mosaic of darkness and deceit. A phantom from the past, Derek Mercer, thought to be long gone, left his mark on the walls of the closet, his presence a chilling specter haunting the investigation. As Shaw and her team peeled back the layers of deception, a sinister pattern emerged. Emma's life, once ordinary, had intersected with a web of darkness spun by Mercer, a man consumed by a twisted desire for control and domination. The revelations led them to another victim, Lynette Porter, a ghostly figure from a forgotten case. Her voice, soft and haunted, whispered of captivity and torment, of a life stolen and a spirit broken. In the shadows of Mercer's twisted mind, a plan unfolded, a tapestry of suffering and manipulation, woven with threads of malice and cruelty. The hunt for him spanned across landscapes, a race against time to stop a predator in his tracks. When Mercer was finally apprehended, his demeanor unnervingly calm, the truth spilled forth like blood from an open wound. His words, laced with malice and arrogance, painted a portrait of a mind twisted by darkness, a soul lost to the abyss. The trial, a theater of justice and retribution, laid bare the depths of Mercer's depravity. His crimes, etched in the annals of infamy, served as a stark reminder of the darkness that lurks within the human heart. As the gavel fell, sealing Mercer's fate, a sense of closure descended upon the courtroom. Lynette Porter's words, a beacon of resilience and strength, echoed in the hushed chamber, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to be broken. And in the aftermath, as the dust settled on the shattered illusions of the past, Detective Shaw kept a memento, a piece of the closet door, a symbol of survival and resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, light can still find a way to shine. Story 27, The Realtor's Secret. The listing from the realtor was clear, no mention of a basement. The blueprints, meticulously studied by the family, revealed nothing about its existence. Yet when they peeled back the worn carpet in their new home, a hidden door revealed itself, its handle heavy and rusted. With effort, 3 of them pried it open, unleashing a rush of stale air thick with the scent of damp earth. Steps led down into the unknown darkness below. Anticipating storage space, they instead found a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows across the walls. And on those walls, a chilling display awaited them, a row of photographs, not of strangers, but of themselves. Moments captured from within the confines of their own home, a violation of privacy that sent shivers down their spines. The Mercer family had moved into the suburban property seeking character and history, unaware of the darkness that lurked within its walls. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene, her partner by her side as they surveyed the basement, the air heavy with the weight of secrets long hidden. Forensic teams meticulously documented the room, the chair bolted to the floor, the photographs arranged in a haunting timeline. Each image told a story of intrusion, of a presence that had watched their every move without their knowledge. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the house held more than just memories of its current residents. Previous owners, each staying for brief, troubled stints, had left behind a trail of mystery and fear. The house seemed to have a life of its own, a sinister history that defied explanation. Through a series of clues and revelations, the truth slowly emerged. A hidden monitoring station, sophisticated surveillance equipment, and a journal filled with the obsessive observations of a man named Edward Kelvin, the original builder of the house who had seemingly vanished without a trace. Kelvin's delusions painted a picture of a man lost in his own creation, believing himself to be the guardian of the house and its inhabitants. The families who came and went were mere players in his twisted theater, unwittingly playing out their lives under his watchful eye. The discovery of Kelvin hiding within the walls brought the nightmare to a chilling conclusion. His mind warped by years of isolation and obsession, he saw himself as the rightful owner of the house, its residents nothing more than passing visitors in his domain. The trial that followed shed light on the extent of Kelvin's surveillance network, the house itself a tool for his voyeuristic tendencies. As the structure was demolished and the ground beneath it filled, the families who had lived there were left to grapple with the realization that their most intimate moments had been violated by a presence they had never suspected. Haunted by the legacy of Edward Kelvin, they found themselves questioning their sense of security, wondering if the walls around them held more secrets than they dared to imagine. The house may have been torn down, but its shadow lingered, a reminder of the dangers that can lie hidden in the most unsuspecting places.